So I'd rather stand up here than sweat than like. It was probably like all three of those were blowing on me.
Recording in progress.
All three of those were blowing on me last time while I was standing there for 30 minutes. I'm like, oh. It's great.
I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Washington City Council chambers. We are here for our workshop meeting, which goes from 4 p.m. until 5:30 p.m. It's good to see some familiar faces that we don't always get to see here, so we welcome you to our meeting. We do have 3 items of discussion, so we'll try to we'll make an effort to divide the time as equally as we possibly can. So that said, today is October 26, 2022. This meeting is also broadcast live on washingtoncity.org/meetings, and I will call for a motion to approve this agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the workshop for October 26th.
A motion by Coates.
Second.
Second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll start right in with essentially a continuation of Title III Business and License Regulations. Now, this is some work that our city recorder, Tara Pence, has been doing for quite some time. I was talking to Tara earlier this week, and some of this section of code dates back to 1989. So we're dealing with about 25 years of antiquated code. So she's put in a lot of effort to update the code, to make it more business friendly, and to align with state statute anywhere where she can. So what I'd like to do to start with, and I know that some of you may be here for this item and maybe a little bit new to the conversation, but there are several items in the Title III Business and License Regulations. Most of those, it seems to me that the biggest topic of discussion continues to be that home occupations. Is there some discussion or some briefing that you'd want from the recorder on those other items before we dive into home occupations?
I think the only thing is it wasn't just home occupation. Well, it kind of was home occupation, but it was your house being used also as like storage and stuff like that for potentially your business. If we want to hold off on that, I will wait to do my comments.
No, I think you're right. You're spot on, Councilman, because I think that's what the recorder's prepared for that. But I think before we got more into that, because I know she's been listening to the council direction, I think she's wondering if there are other items that you'd like to discuss before we get into kind of the home occupation section. And I'm happy to have her just give a high level summary if you'd like, and if that might stir any, thoughts you might have had, or we can, continue on into that portion.
So, Mayor, if I may,
Please, Councilman.
the comments that I have is we have 59 pages. Seems excessive to me. And I kind of related it to the water ordinance that we just passed, as we had 14 pages and got it down to 3. Is there a way that we can take this 59 pages and scale it back and make it simpler for our residents and business owners? It's just kind of like, I've been through this multiple times, and I don't know the best direction to go, but can we scale this document back is my general question, I guess.
So I think part of the issue with it now is because we're repealing and replacing an entire section, that even within that is things you've already done, like the alcohol ordinance has even been copied and pasted over. So it's not just what you're looking at as the business license code, it's everything that from start to finish in businesses. And it's actually less pages than it was, but there's more items we've covered. I don't know that we can take a lot of it out, just because we want to make sure we have everything covered. There's a couple of the ordinances that were written up through the state that are very lengthy, like the sexually oriented business and the residential solicitation. Those ones we can't really shrink down. So they kind of are what they are, because they have to be so detailed for those specific kinds. And then everything else we have that we've added that we can address back to state is just added paragraphs, and I don't really know what else we could take out. I mean, we can try to, but we've even combined everywhere where it had like an appeals or a anything like that. We've put it all together, so I don't know. That
Do you want to maybe maybe go to that briefing document or that first slide that talks about the code update summary? Is that, I'm guessing that's maybe on your next page here?
Yep.
And maybe just
Yep. So
maybe just bring us up to speed again on those.
So on the two on the left, so we actually have made a couple of other changes since the last meeting after discussing with council, but we did pull in the alcoholic beverage and the residential solicitation. They have no changes whatsoever. They're just copied over from the original ones, because we're repealing and replacing everything for numbering purposes. But every one of those you see in the middle, we've added as per state code. So every one of those have itemized out links to state code, and we put them in there as amended. So every time they have an update, we don't have to change our ordinance. So that has added a significant number of pages.
And Tara, if I just jump into it, so that's part of that kind of the thing that they've been talking at the league.
Yep.
Councilman, was it regulatory reform, right? Keeping up with our local code to match state statutes. So that was part of this initiative, this undertaking, was to match the state lawmakers' initiatives on these items.
Yes. And then something that we also discussed last time, we did put the clause in there for construction contractors that they'll comply with state code. But if they are located within the state of Utah, they already have a business license, we'll reciprocate that, so they don't have to have another one with us. And we actually added that into our code too. So that's another section. We wanted to make sure you clearly knew that as soon as this is approved, we won't be doing that anymore. And I think that'll be very beneficial. And we've done that for other licenses as well. So unless they need to have something through Public Works, Public Safety, Fire Patrol, we're going to honor the other licenses in the adjacent cities, so they don't have to duplicate within our city.
Councilman,
It's a
please.
good change. Yeah, Mayor, I just have, I've got 4 or 5 things on the home occupations, but I have a couple of others.
Yes,
that we can
please.
maybe
Yeah,
talk
let's
about.
address those first, and then we'll get to the
Others?
home.
Okay. So where it talks about short-term rentals, it says local property manager required for all short-term residential rental properties homeowner shall designate a local property manager. Local property manager shall be available 24 hours. I think that's fantastic, but I would like to discuss if you own a short-term rental and you're a local resident, that you can manage it yourself.
We allow that.
You do
You
allow
just have
that?
to be local.
Okay.
We just
Okay.
have to have someone that you just have to put you down, so that the police department can contact you in the event of an emergency 24 hours a day.
Perfect.
Didn't we say it was in Washington County?
We did.
Yeah.
So that
But
was,
we need to touch on that a little bit, because if I buy a unit in, say, one of the Coral Canyon master areas. I
Mhm.
can't do it myself. It's under, we only have one for the development. if that
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
there are some of them that
Yeah.
where you have
But
to
they
hire
have to
their
use their
manager.
HOA, or
Yeah.
the HOA designates who that, and it's usually themselves. So I just wanted to clarify that. Because
Yeah.
somebody might own one in there, doesn't mean they can break away from that one, because we're trying to limit our contacts, not to
Yeah.
have a list of 14,321.
Yeah,
you know,
so
contacts,
I
so-
realize there are some where you have to use their
And that's
their
part of
agency,
their,
so-
that's part of their HOA agreement. So when they fill out their application, they fill it out properly.
Okay.
They know
Yeah.
what they're doing on those
Perfect.
ones.
But Councilman, to take that just one little step further, when we voted on that as a council, there are specific reasons within that management group why that is. But we were very clear that individuals that live around should be able to manage their own
Perfect. So
question.
then the other thing that's not, with the home occupations is, I think last meeting, we talked about how there's only been, 2 or 3 instances in your whole career here where we've revoked business licenses. And I believe Councilmember Casperson talked about, and maybe I can't remember for sure who it was, but talked about I know that they can appeal to the city manager. And since there's so few, instances where this happens, I would be okay with an additional appeal to the city council, in addition to the city manager, if they request it.
So would that go straight to city council or after the city manager?
I would
If the
say
city
after
manager
the city
didn't-
manager,
If they weren't
hopefully.
satisfied after the city manager, then it can.
Yeah, and, since the city council are the elected representatives, I don't see that as a problem since there's only been so few instances, so.
So one of the,
Just
I'll
add that.
comment on that, Councilman Henderson. We would prefer to not have 2 appeal steps. And so I would suggest either the council as the appeal body or the manager, so that there's not 2 steps of appeal. The reason why is there's legal rights of what we call exhausting your administrative remedies. And you can't file a lawsuit against the city until you've done so. And so we just wanted to be clear what the administrative remedy is on appeal, who you have to talk to, and then move on so that we don't have 2 layers. And so I think we can accomplish your goal, but I would suggest we just choose one of those layers.
And I'd be okay with that. I just would like to see, I think people like to be able to speak to their elected representatives, when possible. So, I mean, that's a change I would like to see. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but.
That's perfectly fine. We can change that.
I think
I've
that's just,
actually never had an appeal that they've actually appealed it. We've revoked, but by order of the state. So that's not a problem. We'll put that in.
so Councilman, you're suggesting that it just comes to city council then?
Yeah, so Tara would review it and make her decision, which sounds like it's very rare that they, pull a license. But if they decide to appeal it, I think, it'd be good to have the city council.
I completely
do
agree.
that, so.
I just don't know why you guys are giving so much time to Jeremy. Giving him time off, taking away his job duties.
We'll find something else.
I'm good either way. I was good with the manager doing it, but can see your point, so I'm good with that.
Did you have other items, Councilman? Are there other items on those that are not in regards to home occupations? Okay, so I have been working on this with Tara. Actually, Tara's been working on this under your direction. She's listened to your input. But I did have some feedback that we might want to get some citizen input on this, and we did have the public hearing. But with your blessing, council, I'd like to invite any who are here to come forward. And are there any that, Mike, Sherry, are either of you interested in talking to the home occupation? Mike, are you here for that too? You're here for the power. Okay. You're just the eye candy tonight. Sherry, we would love you to come forward and just state your name for the record and then give us some insights on what you think this council ought to be considering when it comes to home occupations. And since you're the only one here for it, we'll go like 3 to 5 minutes. If it gets longer than that, I have this little button I push and you'll just fall right through the floor, but there's a padded landing at the bottom.
Well, I have a lot of friends that might pick,
Yes,
pick
you
me
do.
up.
You
Is
have
this where I
7
need to
friends
put it?
here.
Yes, as you know, my name is Sherry Clark. I'm a Washington City constituent, voter, and a business owner. I have a home occupation license, and I practice at my home. And I'm also speaking for a lot of other constituents. Just in the little bit of time that I've learned about this, I only learned about it a couple days ago. Of course, I went out and talked to people. And so I'm going to give some of their ideas. Typical comments are government overreach, taking over private property rights, unnecessary, where will this lead? I like having people in my neighborhood working at home, keeps my neighborhood safe. Working at home became a necessity during COVID and quite successful and appropriate to continue. The ordinance is cumbersome. And what about mothers with young children who may have someone else helping them sporadically so they don't have to leave their children? Are we forcing mothers out into the workplace instead of having a home? And that was specifically for the one that says you can't have anybody helping you in your home unless they're a member of your household. What do you mean the office space can only be so big? Different businesses require different space, and I believe it's infringing on a private citizen's personal rights. So now I'm going to get to some of the specifics. First of all, I guess there were some penalties. I didn't quite find where they were, so I'd like to know about that. Then in 342D, I quote, "In the discretion of the license officer." That is surely open to subjective interpretation, and that kind of scares me, that, you know, somebody can just make whatever decision they want. Then I saw 2 classes of a license, and I was a little unclear to, one said you don't get a license, or one's a Class A without a license, and one's Class B with a license. And I wasn't quite sure, you know, like for me, what category I'd fall into. Another is the section on garage sales. I just don't even know why that's included. So is there going to be a garage sale police, you know, going around and checking?
I have a few cousins who would revolt if they couldn't go garage sale hopping in the mornings, but
I know, I have some friends like that myself. Then in 344, the issuance of the license, again, it says the license officer may issue a license including any special conditions which are not listed in this chapter. To me, that leaves a lot up for personal interpretation. And then I was kind of backing up Amazon and FedEx and UPS when it said only parcel post or a post office could deliver you a package. Anyway, several times it states federal, state, county, and local requirements. I don't want the federal government showing up at my door. And we certainly know that, you know, we can see it on the news every night when they get involved in things. We are for local control. So I'm, you know, Washington City can put in there whatever they want. Well, not whatever they want, but they can put in some. And then again, 346, inspection authority. Code enforcement officers, fire personnel, and health inspectors may request entrance to the home and inspect prior to issuing a license. Oh, that just seems to me undue surveillance and regulation. And people would feel unsafe in their own homes. If I always thought, you know, somebody's gonna come knocking at my door, that would be kind of scary. And then you have this residential solicitation, and maybe that's part of one of these other things that you were talking about, but I just didn't know why door-to-door solicitors, you know, what they have to do with home businesses. So I wasn't sure what that section was about. And then another one that someone brought up to me is that 344, number 3, only materials, equipment, or tools as part of a normal household. You know, so only screwdrivers, hammers, whatever. Well, we know men and women sometimes have special tools that, you know, I wouldn't want you to say I couldn't have, you know, my whatever. So, in conclusion, we would like you to consider these various issues. And the best possible idea, we believe, is to scrap this whole ordinance altogether. Use what's already there. It served Washington City well. Maybe add a section on signage. You know, I like the idea of no neon lights or big business yard signs in people's front yards. And if there's certainly, the reason you are doing this is there's nuisances, identify what those nuisances are, give penalties, and, you know, if somebody has chance number 1, 2, whatever, I'm okay for that. And last but not least, I am offering my services to help you with this if you want to, you know, a constituent's ideas.
Sherry, tell the council what your home business is, if you're comfortable with that. You said you have a home business. Did you say
I
that?
do. I'm a therapist, and I do mainly Zoom.
Fantastic.
It's Clark Counseling Center. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are so glad that we got some public input on this. Points are well taken. Council, let me maybe just bring some context, and I took some notes. I'm going to ask staff to respond and then open this up to your comment. But I just want to read what our existing code in regards to home occupations allows for, okay? And Tara, did you prepare these? Do you have these handouts for the council? And she just finished this afternoon. And what I did is I asked Tara to just prepare a bit of a summary on what our existing code does in this regard, what the proposed code would do, and then what maybe a better option based on your feedback would be. And then you can, you know, chew on that however you want. But let me just read what this existing code allows, just to put some context here. So under home occupation, any use conducted entirely within a dwelling and carried on by persons residing in the dwelling unit, this accessory use shall be clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling for dwelling purposes and shall not change the character thereof. The dwelling shall be the principal residence of the occupants. The home occupation shall not include any display, stock, and trade employees or the use of advertising except as provided in this title. The home occupation shall not involve the use of any accessory building or yard space outside the main building. So our current code does not allow the use of any accessory building or yard space outside the main building. That is very restrictive. That to me is overreach, right? And then it says a home occupation may include, but is not limited to, the following: the office or studio of a physician, dentist, artist, musician, lawyer, architect, engineer, teacher, or similar professional, workshops, dressmaker, or hairdressing studios, and the care of not more than 4 children other than members of the family residing in the dwelling unit. I don't know if you could operate your business based on our existing code. I didn't hear, you might be able to get it under similar professional. So this is kind of the problem. We have a very restrictive code. And so Tara, in the midst of aligning our code with current state statute, what they're calling regulatory reform, brought back a proposed code to the council. And I'm going to read that, but the council in the last meetings has said, we still feel like this is too restrictive. And so her working with some other staff members has brought forward another proposal to broaden it even more. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get rid of red tape, not create more. So the proposed code, and there are 2 classes. Tara can answer what those are, but I'm going to tell you what the proposed code does. It says that all vehicles used for business it does talk about Class A, which Tara, what are Class A uses? I know it's in the code. It's just
So-
a summary of those.
Class A would almost be what we currently have now. State law passed a new law that basically said, if you have a home-based business, it's clearly indiscernible from the outside. Everything is conducted within the home.
That's a Class A.
That's a Class A, and you're not providing a service outside. You would not technically be required to get a license. Our code doesn't currently have that in there, so that's why we've got the
That's
Class
the
A, and
regulatory
Class B
reform.
would be something outside of what our current code almost just falls under the A.
So Class A is inside the home, Class B is outside, and the proposed code restricts it to no more than 400 square feet or 20% of the house, no cells or signage. So then it talks, and it gets restrictive on the parking, right? It says, the proposed code says all vehicles used for business purpose must be parked on the resident's property, no street side parking, no industrial equipment, may be stored, no industrial equipment at all may be stored or parked in residential zones. Only one vehicle and one trailer used for business purposes may be parked within the view of the street. All other vehicles and trailers used for business purposes must be parked in a storage garage, behind a fence or otherwise shielded from public view. And then it talks about the number of occupants and the patron's vehicles and the hours. So, and I'm going to open this up real quick, Council. And I agree, this was too restrictive. So I appreciate the work you're doing on this. This is the option that staff's come back for you to consider. Again, we talked about what Class A and Class B. On Class B, there's no restriction on the size, right? It's either Class A or Class B based on the state description. And then what this says, 3 bullet points: the home occupation is carried out within the home, garage, accessory building, or other space of a residential property, but is not observable by the general public from the street in front of the residence, and the business activities do not create a nuisance for adjacent properties or disrupt the normal residential character of the neighborhood. The applicant provides off-street parking for all vehicles related to the home occupation, no on-street parking allowed. So if you have the room to take more than one car, you can take whatever you can fit on there. And lastly, I really liked this because as the proposed code says, no equipment, right? This says, there is no storage or parking of tractor trailers, semi-trucks, or other heavy equipment on the present premises or in the streets in the vicinity of the premises of the home occupation. So they're saying, these are what we don't want showing as the heavy equipment. Council, I'm happy to leave it to you to discuss now. And I've got a list of things if Tara and Thad maybe want to answer some of the questions that Sherry had.
Mayor. So I like this possible option. There's a couple questions I have on it though. So on the Class A where it says indiscernible from residential use, I like that. Only legal occupants. Let me ask a question about that and I'll give an example. So up the street from me, there's a real estate broker that has a home office. She also has an office in town, but she works mostly, from her home office. A couple times a week, she has an assistant that comes and helps her with her books. Would she be in violation of the way this possible option reads, only legal occupants?
On the Class A, because that's the one that basically is saying nothing's happening, but it wouldn't make it so she couldn't get a business license. So the Class A is basically exempt from licensure, period.
Okay.
So they don't even have to come into us to get a business license according to state law if they fall under that.
So-
But with
so
the B
Sherry's legal.
option- Yes.
You are
But
legal,
with the
not
B
by us.
option, if her person's coming and parking off the street, it's not saying you can't have people there. It's just saying no on-street parking and it's taking place inside.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Tara. So
Mhm.
what if someone has, and a scenario I just thought of is that they have an office somewhere else, they register their business license there, but they park their equipment on their personal home. You don't know that there's a business there.
But they wouldn't be able to park their on the heavy equipment in a residential zone. Are you saying it would be heavy equipment or just?
I'm just whatever equipment,
So
right?
if they're parking, so that's part of the thing that she said as far as usage. You can have a business license somewhere else, but if you're still using your home as part of the business, you can have two sites. You would have to use your, if you were gonna be parking stuff at your home, that would still be a home occupation to some extent.
So you wouldn't have to get a separate license.
You would, if you didn't have one there and you were using your home for something, yeah, we would want you to get a license.
only-
Would fall under zoning.
Yeah,
Because it's, the business isn't being run out of the home. He has a site. But if you're bringing stuff, then your zoning regulations kick in. And if they don't cover it, then they're good. But if we don't want, if you end up with someone who's just abusing the neighborhood that way, then you just write code that people can't do this, that, or the other. But it would be a zoning issue, not a business license issue, your scenario.
So
Are you s-
tonight,
you're
tonight may
saying-
be a night of scenarios, sorry.
Yes. No, let's hear it.
So,
Love it.
Which option are we on?
we learn from
Councilman?
these, right? Because we're trying to look at any contingencies because we definitely don't want to negatively impact our residents. So
Right.
I had one person reach out to me. They have a business that they claim that is based in a neighboring city, about 130 miles away. They claim that they have a business license there. Are they required to have a business license here if this is a, however you want to call it, a secondary location for his home and business? Or how does that work?
So I'll clarify, because yours, they were just parking their stuff there. Nothing's taking place in the home as far as business. So that would be zoning. But if they're running a business, you can run a business in two locations. So if you have a home here and you're running the business here and you're using it for whatever you're using here, but there's business taking place at this home, yes, you would still need a license, even if you're licensed somewhere else.
Okay, good to know.
But according to 342D, it's up to the code enforcement officer to decide whether or not.
So the 342D, is that the one with multiple licenses?
Correct.
So what that is meaning, we have people that'll come in and they'll say, hey, I am doing clothing sales out of my house, but my husband has a contractor's license. So can we just have one business license? No, those aren't the same. But if you have people that come in and they have a business that's like they have two businesses, but they're almost identical and they have an LLC over both of them and they want to get one license, that's when, yes, they're almost identical businesses and they have one company running both. That's not a problem. But it's when you have multiple businesses that are not even remotely related
And it's single location.
in a single
Okay.
location. Mhm. So that's what that question was.
So you make them get two licenses?
If they're two completely separate businesses, yes.
I know, but what if they're selling clothing to the construction company, guys?
Well, you know what? They could. I bet you would. You would look
Jeremy, can I
great in a
mute his
dress.
mic at times?
Another scenario.
No, okay.
We read an ordinance that mutes Councilman Coates' mic every 5 minutes.
We got this right here, the old
He's writing it down. He's gonna try to get that out.
I give you a scenario here and see how it fits in with this. So I live on Quail Ridge Drive, and on my street, there are 6 residents that have either skid steers, mini X's, or both. And so if there's 6 on my street, there must be, if I extrapolate that out to the whole entire community, there's got to be hundreds of contractors, farmers, ranchers that have equipment like that at their house. Even, people that have half-acre lots, a lot of them have a Kubota tractor, like an L39 or something. So how does that work with the heavy equipment there?
So
And are
I
you
don't
going to
know
answer on the proposed code or the possible option?
Either one. So
I would recommend you answer on the possible option because I
So-
think we know where this council is on the.
I don't know if everyone in your neighborhood is licensed, but I will let me give you some numbers. So we pulled this up and we have almost 600 home occupations right now in the entirety of Washington City.
Yeah.
The only ones that we see much of a problem, and I have Sergeant Finona here, so if we have questions of them, we can totally ask them, but most of the problems we have outside of the downtown area, I feel like are on-street parking issues. And people are parking like huge things on the side of the road and causing problems in the entire development. If there is 6 people on your street that have those, I would dare say some of them are not business. They don't have a license. So I don't know if they're just using them for farm equipment. I don't know what they're doing with them, but technically heavy equipment would not be something that you would typically allow in a residential zone.
So, but there's got to be 600 contractors in Washington that have a skid steer or a Mini X,
We don't have 600 business licenses in Washington City, so
right?
if they do, they're not parking them on their property or they aren't licensed. A lot of our people, when they do their business license, they will sign a thing saying they're leaving them on site and not bringing them to their house.
So, okay, the guys on my street are, most of them contractors.
Mhm.
So if we pass this possible option, would a Mini X or a skid steer be in violation of this? And if so, I'd like to scratch that.
Okay.
Because if we were to pass this, immediately you'd have 400 contractors in Washington sideways with the city ordinance, so.
We have everyone in Washington City who has a home occupation right now in violation, every
I
single
know,
one. So-
and I'd like to change that, because I've read the current one too, and it's not realistic to.
That's what I'm
and-
saying,
and if
every
we-
one of them is.
Right, if we did this, there's not enough commercial or industrial space in Washington County for all these guys to go park their skid steers or. So I'm wondering if we could, now, I can understand, I went and looked at all of those, addresses, every one of them. One of them I can see is taking this to the limit, I could see that. So I'm wondering, skid steers and Mini X's on the back of a trailer are so common in our area for contractors to park. Could we do some kind of a gross vehicle weight on this, which would, make it okay for a guy to have a skid steer? There's
So-
literally hundreds of those in Washington, yet would maybe make it so that you couldn't have a D9 cat in your backyard.
Exactly. I think that's it. If you know the two exceptions you'd like, we could just put right in there, heavy equipment in this case does not include skid steers and Mini X, but anything else would
I
be.
But what about so just my neighbors, since we're ratting out all our neighbors.
We're gonna drive on your street tonight.
Ratting yourself out, right? So I'm just saying, I drive by it and they live at a townhome and they constantly have a lowboy trailer and a piece of equipment. And it's not every night, but it's on the public street, and we can't stop them from parking on the public street. One thing that I don't know if we can do this, but I've always said if they park it in front of their house, I don't care. It's when you bleed onto other people's front of their houses. And I understand that it's a public street and we don't own the street. We own it as a public.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we can say something of that, as long as it's not in front of anybody else's house and you park it, one trailer in front of your house, is that the exception? Because that's where I'm like, yeah, it's parked on the public street, but at least it's in front of their house and not mine. Because if I don't have to look out my front door and see the trailer, because that would really frustrate me if every morning you woke up and there was this line of semi trucks ready to roll. But if they're in front of their house, that's their view, not mine. So I don't know.
I think we'd hate it if Sergeant Finona came all the way over here and didn't answer any questions for us. So I think he ought to help answer
Sergeant
that question.
Finona, yes.
I thought the manager was going to answer my question, but he just deferred the question.
A good manager delegates.
Go ahead, Sergeant.
Really, I mean, if we get down to it,
Come forward into that mic just
if
a
we
little
get down
bit.
to it, there's not a lot that we really have issues with. The mostly complaints that we're getting are people that have the heavy equipment that they're starting up early in the morning, or that they're bringing home, or that are, the neighbors are having to look at or smell from all the commercial grease and whatnot from next door. That's the issues that we're having. And we don't go to people and pummel them just because they have a piece of equipment, whether it be a Mini X or whatever, and most of the time, if it's backed into somebody's property, nobody cares. Then we don't get complaints on that. We get complaints because the street's a mess, or it's damaged, or the sidewalks are blocked or cracked because of it. Those are the things that we're getting complaints over. Most of the time, there's a lot of contractors here, and most of them are really great as far as moving their equipment off the roadway and whatnot. So, we do get them here and there, where people will call and complain. And every once in a while, if we have a 50-foot trailer with a loader on it or something, we'll get a call. They're going to get a call on it. But for the most part, like I said, the issues come with the smells that come from it, the loud noises that come from it, those types of things. So,
Any dangerous situations from those that you just described?
there will be, I haven't yet to see a piece of heavy equipment that doesn't leak something, or leave something on the roadway. or
Like a
something
truck on the road, we talked about that. I mean, and if you can visualize a regular vehicle, it'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
But in my neighborhood, see, we're talking about neighbors again. I have a gentleman that delivers hay, hauls hay. He has a diesel truck and he delivers hay. And that was a constant complaint in our neighborhood because they say it's unsafe. You can't see around it. Kids can't see cars coming down the road.
Sure.
So would you just talk about the safety that you've seen in your complaints, because those seems to be an important issue?
Yeah, I mean, it is an active community, a lot of cyclists and things like that, and there are a lot of kids out running around. Some of the streets, especially, older town Washington, their streets are small. We don't have room to be parking a gooseneck trailer on any of the small roads. Like I said, fortunately, a lot of the properties are bigger, so they're able to get them onto the properties and it doesn't cause much of a problem. But there are still issues trying to move cars up and down the roads with the equipment on the street. But like I said, we're pretty quick to address that when a call comes in or a complaint comes in. But like I said, everything's good and fine until someone makes a complaint in most cases. And like you said, unless it is a safety issue where we're on a corner or we're seeing people having to skid to a stop or getting a lot of complaints traffic wise. So we do handle that way.
Further questions for Sergeant Fenola?
Well, I just got a question. Of the complaints you get, what percentage do you feel are justified? I think one of the things that we're worried about are we make our codes so difficult that a neighbor, can find anything to shut down a home business. But are you finding a high percentage of those complaints are actually fairly justified? Are you getting a lot of nuisance calls on things like this?
Honestly, it's probably half and half. I mean, it is. I mean, when people call in, it's either kind of nitpicky or it's very egregious. It's really one or the other. It's not really down the middle. Sometimes it's just a neighbor dispute,
Yeah.
to be honest. But we don't intend to go out and just hammer people because this is what the law says. We go out most of the time and, hey, they are in compliance to a degree, and we're not getting any complaints or anything that way, so we leave them alone. Basically, is how it works. And so the more calls we get on it, the more we're going to address it. The more our guys see it, the more they're going to address it.
So if you went out on one that felt like a neighbor to neighbor dispute where they're trying to use it to be a hammer on the neighbor when a problem doesn't exist, you're able to use your discretion in that case.
We do use discretion. And like I said, I mean, we had one just not too long ago. The guy's got a dually pickup long bed with a 50-foot trailer. And he parks it, and it is kind of blocking the neighbors in front of their house. And to fix that, all he had to do was back it into his driveway, and there was no issues, after that. And obviously, is it supposed to be there? Not technically per code, but it's not an issue. It's not causing safety issues. It's super clean. His driveway doesn't let it leak anywhere. He's good that way. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that most of the concerns that you go out on or that you observe, there hasn't been a great number of violations written, or hardly any. Is that because we don't have the ability or because it didn't warrant it?
What do you mean written?
Like, did you make like citations?
We do, yes, but we do our best to comply with really kind of the city. I don't know what you
want to work with people rather than cite, right?
We're trying to get some compliance over a citation for sure.
Work with people and then try to, okay.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make a living. We get that. So.
So Councilman Coates and I were just visiting, and we kind of like the idea of possibly doing as in regards to the heavy equipment. Maybe if we had some kind of a weight. We could figure out some kind of a weight limit so that these small contractors with little tractors and farmers with little tractors could be okay. But then guys with real big heavy equipment, would need to find a place other than their house to store
Is there
it.
a DOT classification that would work for that?
I think a weight would work better because the equipment is just based on the weight. And so we can find out examples where a skid steer and a Mini X, as long as we're, just below, as long as they're below that approximate weight limit.
Are they on the titles? I can't remember. Do you have to put the weight of the vehicle on those, some of those on their titles? Because either that, we're gonna have to buy scales and we're gonna be closing down the streets to pull up on the, I mean,
No,
I know
you
that,
can-
you
you
know,
can
you can
look up
order one,
the
they said
weight.
this skid steer is X amount of weight, but problem is that trailer and that, you know,
I know, but why can't we just put in here at this weight, less than this weight, examples Mini X skid steer? And if they can hand over a weight of another piece of equipment that says, hey, I'm less than these two, those are examples of what we need, then you're
no,
fine.
I was only asking because then it's easy for the guy to go grab his title and says, you know,
There'll
this
be
is
weights
the weight
on
on
them.
it.
It's pretty easy to look up a weight of a piece of equipment.
So I would say basically anything that can be pulled by a pickup truck would be okay, including a backhoe. So on equipment, I would say anything the weight of a backhoe or less would be okay.
So you want backhoes as part of that? Skid steer and
I'd say a
Mini X?
backhoe really in the construction world is considered a smaller piece of equipment, you know? And so, you know, I guess there's some really large backhoes, but I would, you know, I know guys that haul their backhoes with their pickup
But
truck.
don't all those commercial haulers, I know in my business, we have to have the weight posted on the side of our vehicle,
On the vehicle, not
on the vehicle
necessarily the
itself,
equipment.
just the vehicle's weight. Okay.
This
So
just,
anyway,
this
just some
just goes to
thoughts.
show you that when it says only materials, equipment, or tools recognized as part of a normal household may be used, I think people would have a very different perspective what is normal, and so I feel like we need to either scratch that or just be more specific with everything we do on this, like you're trying to get to right now.
Well, I think we should scratch that because I know people that have hobbies that are way more intensive than mechanic shops. So
Well, and I hope that's not what we're about. We
Yeah.
don't need to be detailing to our citizens what
Well, we're
tools they
just,
have in
I
their
just don't
shop.
want it to be subjective when it says no industrial equipment. That could be very, like, you know, like what you're saying with trying to come to what is that?
In my house right now.
What?
I have industrial equipment at my house right now.
What's your address? No, I'm just kidding.
It is.
take
So-
care of this problem.
So I
for
live
us?
up in Buena Vista.
It's right out Prickly
I'm one of
Pear.
those uniloaders, guys.
Well, just from the zoning perspective though, as your zoning administrator, that's where, you know, I mean, I always, is the rub comes in, it's hard as I deal with people and their circumstances. Because we have zoning, we have residential zones, we have commercial zones. And people buy in and invest into their homes as they do their businesses because they're in a specific zone. And that's all I want to keep in mind, that I don't mind trying to help out people and do home occupations. That's why we have home occupations. But when we keep pushing the envelope to where we're not, you can't call it a residential zone anymore because I've got 6 guys on my street that all do this and it feels like it's not purely, I'm just trying to keep in mind for the basis of all your thoughts and your decisions to try to keep that, because that's the basis of every city, right? And what we're even talking about is residential, commercial, industrial, open. We got to keep in mind the basis of the integrity of zoning itself, or else we start to lose that integrity of what your zoning is meant to do to protect. You know, in a lot of cases, it is there to protect people and other people who don't have the business. You know, they have their rights, I guess, because that's how they tell me. They have their rights too. And if this guy gets to keep his rights, but all of a sudden it's really infringing on mine, we have a win and a lose. And we're trying to do as much win-win as possible. So I'm just throwing that out for perspective, because the more we get into this, we're really pushing, it feels like, envelopes out of residential zones to these hybrid that are kind of half and half, but some people are being inundated or affected by it that don't have it.
So just to be clear, thank you. On my street, nobody cares if those 6 guys have their Mini X's or skid steers. And that's why we live on our street, not in an HOA, is because we can do that, you know.
And I'd add on to that comment, in my street, because I am in an HOA, I'd get a letter from my HOA, right? And a lot of these, so I think the point that the councilman's making is people choose where they want to live, and the government that's closest to you, regulates most, right? So if they were in straight zoning, I think what this council is trying to say is we want people to be able to have their occupations without government intrusion, right? So there's some reasonable, but I think broadly we're looking to be business friendly.
But I think Drew brings up a good point. You buy a house and then all of a sudden guy buys a house next to you and he has a bigger property and all of a sudden you got 3 semis every morning. I mean, that's
The
not,
semis are the ones that are still being,
So one thing I like about this,
tractor trailers and semis were the ones that were saying no.
I like the possible option. I'll tell you why. And I like Sergeant Finona's comments about discretion, because we can write code that tries to understand every single situation, and we'll probably be wrong. And then we'll catch these. But I like this Class B that says the business activities do not create a nuisance for adjacent properties or disrupt the normal residential character of the neighborhood in which the residence is located. So keeping it a little bit vague sometimes sounds like we're opening it up for real heavy enforcement, but I think it opens it up. If the people on your street like each other, they get along, they're kind to each other, you don't go out at 4 a.m. and crank up all of your equipment, we're not going to have a problem with the residential character. But I think to Councilman Coates' point of view, I used to have a neighbor who would keep his tractor trailer in his front yard and turn that on at 3 o'clock in the morning and warm it up for an hour. And it's noisy and loud. So there's a point, you can do it without disturbing the residential character, and you can do it with, and I actually like the discretion, but it's really hard to write code for every situation. It just gets really tedious. So
Well, then you have the situations too where you said 50% of the time, you know, it's justified that they're calling, where then sometimes it's just neighbors being nitpicky with each other too.
So I have a question though on, if our current code says we can't have it, why aren't we shutting down the ones that are bad? Like, say we didn't do anything and our current code says you can't have a home occupation. How come we aren't enforcing our,
Tara,
Well, because we've been trying to be business.
can you speak into the mic, please? I have a recorder
Yes.
that.
Get mad. We've been trying to be business friendly the best that we can. So we had everything that's came in so far going through community development, so they can review exactly what's happening at the house, if we feel like it's going to negatively impact the surroundings, because we don't want to turn everyone away. I mean, essentially right now we would have to tell everybody, unless you're doing a digital design from home and that's it, I mean, we would be telling you no. So everything currently goes through community development to review what they're actually doing. They submit a site plan, what's located where, do you have a truck, where's it at on your property, those kind of things, so we can get them through.
so I'm super glad that we're being business friendly, but I think my question is, if we have an egregious one, why doesn't our current code just allow us to stop them?
Well, it does.
So why didn't we? We do.
They're just, once you give them that business license, that's what I'm saying. It is difficult, and they start bringing more and more stuff in. Like, once they get to that point, it is very difficult to get it all back out again.
But
Like, we're talking months to get it. I mean, you
we're going to
can't
have the
just-
same situation even if we
and
pass
we
this
will.
code.
We will, but the application will say, you're agreeing to these things, you're checking it off, you're signing, this is what you're agreeing to. So we at least have some teeth that they can go in and say, this is what you agreed to. And if you don't comply, we can take you, like, they can be cited, they can take them to court if they need to, if it's that egregious. But we don't like to do that. Like Josh said, we like to work with people and try to see if they can get it cleaned up. This is what you agreed to. Can you get this moved off? We'll give you 60 days.
Well, and one of the things that Jeremy mentions, if they start their engines early in the morning, right? We have a noise ordinance that can deal with that as well. Is, hey, you can't start business till 7 a.m. anyways, or unless you're a cement company. So you can go with the noise ordinance. Yeah, on new homes, but so that's all I'm saying is
I would like to just point out one thing that we need to think about too. And I totally get what you're saying about the weight, but do we have a limit on that? Because we had someone downtown that brought in, like, they decided to start their own equipment rental company, and every single thing would have fallen under that lower weight. But we don't want a heavy equipment rental place in our residential zone, and it was a problem for the entire neighborhood. So we have, I don't know how we set that guideline. They can have one Mini X, they can have one skid steer, they can have one piece of heavy equipment. Can they have 10? Because then you've got the rental business again. So those are things that I think we need to take into consideration too when we're writing it. So I don't know, just something to think about, because I don't know if you were aware of like some of those things that are happening.
I agree with you. I remember the rental company. I'm just looking at some weights of equipment here, but, so I went to last night I went to all those addresses you gave me. The one with one of the houses had like 4 dump trucks. And, for me, that's pushing the limits way over the line. For me, I have no problem with the contractor having a skid steer and a Maniac that he pulls around and he's not really bothering anybody, but I can see if those dump trucks all fire up at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's a problem for the whole neighborhood. But for every one guy like that, there's 150 guys that mind their own business and don't bother anybody, and they're doing their thing and paying their taxes and making a living for their family. So I think the thing that we're kind of needing to do is how do we make an ordinance where we can go after somebody like that for bothering the whole neighborhood, but not put 150 guys at odds with the city ordinances that are minding their own business. So that's kind of, what I'm thinking. I mean, that we could do a total weight, maybe you could have 2 pieces of equipment. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather keep it simple, but,
Simple might be more, Councilman, just rather than having to deal with weights, like you said, we don't want to have to weigh things. Maybe it's just identifying the pieces of equipment.
yeah.
I mean, to me, I understand and I really appreciate what you just said. This has been a great discussion because really what we're trying to do is find a balance of people's rights to be able to work out of their homes. I mean, you think of the changes that we've had the last 5 to 6 years. We didn't even know what VRBO is or Airbnb or DoorDash or Uber, any of those. Those are ways for people to make a living using what they already own. And I think it's important to remember those things. We are very committed to personal property rights and individual rights, but you also, again, you have to consider the rights of the people that are being negatively affected. And I agree, the egregious offenders, we have to have enforcement to make sure that those people can be addressed properly. But the thing that I thought when Sherry was speaking is when she talked about the mother that needs to work from home. Now, that's an issue that I didn't even think of, other than the fact that we live in different times now. But with these different times, that doesn't mean that we cannot provide security within one's home. And that means the truck that was started at 4 o'clock in the morning, that happens every morning because it's an ongoing business. That's different than somebody that's building a house. The house eventually is going to be done, so you may have to deal with some things while it's being built. And so for me, it's finding that balance. I think we've made some great strides forward to find that balance, but I don't think that, I just don't think that we can underestimate people's ability to make a living using what they already own or have in today's world.
Council, final thoughts, final counsel back to staff on this, and then we'll take 10 minutes on parking ordinance and 20 minutes on growth rate.
I want to, we had talked about seeing this and voting on it next week or in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Or when will that be?
But
I feel like we need more time, and I feel like we should just have this conversation. I don't think we should be in a rush. I feel like we just barely start having a conversation about it, and then we have to move on to the next topic. And so I would rather just take our time with this, try to get it right, try to make sure that we're looking at all angles and considering feedback from residents. And I'm glad for this feedback that we've had today. And so I just don't want to be in a rush and feeling like we have to pass this. I would like to have more discussion on this because I do have more, topics that I want to discuss that we haven't even got to yet.
Yeah, right.
So Mayor, could I ask, just simply for the fact that business license renewals are coming up, we've been holding off sending them out for this. Would council be okay for us to, currently we have home occupations in our zoning code. So if we kept that section in here that
Intact.
says, so this business license code that you all have, instead of having the whole section on home occupations right now, instead of doing that, we just refer it back to Title IX, chapter, whatever it is in zoning. And then we approve the rest of my business license code with the master fee schedule. And then when you guys are ready, we can update either the home occupation section within business license, or we'll just update it in the zoning, because we'll have to do it in zoning regardless, because it is in there too. So that way we could just say, this is what it is right now. It's not changing. Of course, we're still not in compliance, but at least everything else can move forward while we're working on that to get it exactly like you want it. That's what I would like to ask if
I
you
would
could
say
do.
just wait. We can do 2 more weeks. I don't think
I
that's
just-
a harm.
Our business license renewals, we wanted to get this out, like we have a fee thing that's waiting and everything in our renewals. We have people calling, wanting them.
Send them then.
2 weeks anyway.
That's fine. Send them anyways.
We
Send 'em
can.
what
Do you
they-
think we'll be ready for approval in 2 weeks?
I have no idea, but all I know is just send them as they are today. And if it changes, it changes. I don't know. I mean, I get what you're trying to do,
Yeah,
but
so our,
I agree with Councilwoman Casperson. I think it's not going to change anything if we do it now or if we do it in 6 months from now. I understand we want to get it updated, but I'd rather get it right than rush it.
so do we want to just keep having all the contractors licensed and do all their renewals? And like that's what I'm talking about. Like all of our out of area contractors are all have to keep submitting, and they're all going to have to do renewals to submit for that. Like all of that stuff that we're trying to change is still going to maintain the way it is.
So they'll have to get
So
separate
they'll all have to get
licenses rather
separate
than not
licenses
have
every
the.
time. Yeah, that's the thing we've been trying to hold. Like we've had contractors waiting because they're trying to get it done and they don't want to do the renewal because they have to go to all their other cities, get their licenses current before they can come through.
The other
us.
thought that I had is maybe also, well, it seems like the home occupation is the main point of discussion. The other thought is typically we have the planning commission chew on land use, and this is kind of the land use section of it. I'm wondering if we also send this back down to the planning commission, let them chew on it a little bit, make them, work on it a little bit and bring back some recommendations. But I personally like the idea of moving forward with the rest of the ordinance, but this is your call. This is a legislative call.
So
But
Mayor,
you're hearing what staff's recommendation is.
so Mayor, I agree with Councilman Casperson. This is something that we need to take our time. I'm wondering if it might warrant, whatever the council feels with giving it to planning commission, but I'm wondering if it warrants a workshop that is dedicated to this topic. It seems like something that, it seems like something that we need to get right. It's important. There's, because it's important on both sides. So
I'll schedule, council, can you make time for maybe a 2-hour block or something? If we'll try to be sensitive on a, Wednesday afternoon or something on an off week.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
want it next week. I don't think next week. Let's
Okay.
give us some more time to work on it, right? I would actually recommend, you've heard some more. I think you've heard we want it to simplify it as much as we can. At least that's from me. Simplify it. I think the possible options are
Yeah, if you
are
could give me
not-
some suggestions where to simplify, because I don't think I can take it out of the three.
this is simplified.
No, I mean like the code that is residential solicitation, the sexually oriented business, the
I'm
tobacco,
not
those ones I can't.
I'm just
shrink.
talking the home
Home
Oh,
occupation.
just the home occupation? Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I
I'm just
understand. After
talking
you
the
said
whole-
that, I understood what you were saying, and so I'm not asking you to change
Okay,
that stuff.
sorry, I thought we were still talking about the whole
but
code.
this gives us a good template.
Mhm.
And if we work on this in the meantime, council, and we look at it, I think it's a great step forward, but we just have to look at all the ramifications of it. I think it's a great start. I really do.
Excellent. Great work.
Can I just
Please.
quickly say, when I am bringing up concerns, I'm not in no way, attacking anyone that's working with the city. It's just trying to make sure we get it right. So I just want you to know that too. I appreciate your work on this, and
Mayor, can I add one thing?
Please, Councilman.
Just as we're looking at the nuisances, Council Fad, I'm going to call him Council Fad versus Council Segmiller, sent over the list of the codes of the nuisances. And I would recommend that we all read 533, which is the definition of the nuisances. And a lot of this information is there: construction equipment, on-road, on-street parking, nuisances, the odors, the smells, all of that is already in our nuisances. So that may be something that we look at next. if we don't want to be
I like it.
restrict, because that's already restricting construction equipment. Like zero construction equipment is allowed in a non-commercial zone, according, if it's a nuisance. So if I were to call on any of those homeowners on Quail Ridge Drive, they would have to remove those skid steers as it sits right now. So just, I would recommend looking at that.
I am so busted.
Like,
Texted all of them
I don't
already.
think you're the only one.
I'm impressed
Call me
because
away.
Got put on notice, by the way.
533 is the longest definition of all of city code, and it takes at least 30 minutes to read. So Councilman Martinson put in his time.
I've got a whole list, 533A2. I mean, I could go on. There's like 12 of them that I just wrote down. So
That's awesome. Okay, so great impact, great input. We'll schedule a separate meeting. We'll make sure that we have plenty of time to vet this policy. Thank you, City Recorder. Thank you, Sergeant Finona. Appreciate you both. Okay, we're going to take 5 minutes on parking, and we might lump
5
that into that
minutes?
special work session if we have further discussion, or we might be ready to go. And then we're going to take the last 20 minutes on growth for that water ordinance that we're looking at, or for the water capital. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Can we get through Halloween first? All right, Community Development Director Drew Ellerman. Oh, let me read that on the. So item number 3 is off-street parking.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I hope you had a chance to look. I kind of tweaked even the numbers from
I'm gonna set the table one more time here, real
2
quick.
minutes now. Oh,
Yeah, you're cutting your time down. I want to make sure this council knows a couple of things that Drew did listen to the feedback. He split those out as you see. I also want to make sure that you know that this also did go to Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission has reviewed and recommended this. Now go.
okay. So I broke it up into 2 boxes, call them apartments, condos, and then townhomes and other multi, so we can at least give them different categories. So we did that, and I changed the numbers. I went from the 1.75 on the 1 bedroom, and again, went back trying to keep fine tuning that. So I went down to 1.5. But what really helped was when I went into the visitor parking, I kept trying to think, I can't decide to go to 3.5 or 3.0. And then something just hit me and says, you're not tied to either one. Why don't you just plug in 3.25? And all of a sudden the fireworks went off and the bright lights came, and I'm saying that I'm going back to the projects that you passed as a council, but had them bump up some parking, specifically, and going to the 1.5, going to the 3.25 pretty much hit exactly where you had pushed those projects to with the extra parking. So we kind of hit those numbers right on. I gave you other cities, and I didn't, if you go to the page that we provided months ago about cities, I just took half of those and kind of just randomly, I didn't pick them by because they help prove a point or anything. I just said, I'm going to take Farmington, I'll take Saratoga Springs. I just randomly grabbed those guys, and, and probably if I wanted to, I could have found it and fine-tuned it better to prove a point, but I just randomly wanted to do that. So any questions that you had with those numbers, I hope the information, I gave you lots of data from other cities and how we would compare with the proposed, these 2 tables, and then the visitor parking going to 3.25. What that means is 1 parking stall for every 3.25 dwelling units. So fire away.
So Drew, I went through this pretty thoroughly, and the thing that I liked, I thought you put it together well because it got my questions going for myself, is that looking at the other cities and then looking at the apartments that we have been evaluating and looking at, is that we're increasing a little bit because we've all felt like we need a little bit, but then we're not still as high. So I think we're hitting the number better than, I do think we got to look at the cities code. Like an example, St. George is 392 on the first one, and we would be now 355. And that kind of hits in the spot where we think we're a little short. But I think the thing we're missing in this code, and I talked to Jeremy about it a little bit, and we kind of were going back and forth, and is the biggest thing we have is our current code probably works for apartments if it's adjacent to the building. When you're not close to the building and it's pushed off into a far parking lot, they don't get used. And so one thing that I would like to do is add a distance from the building. Is that if it's within 300, 350 feet, you have to have this many stalls within that range of the building And if it does, I don't know what that distance is, but a footage from that building, you have to have that many stalls. If you don't, and I'm not talking visitor parking, I'm just talking bedroom parking. And if we have that distance, and then what that does is incentivize people to build around their buildings more to help get people closer parked to their buildings. The one thing that I would ask is we also have an asterisk that says council can approve otherwise as long as you still meet the parking, because some sites don't work.
Problematic, yeah.
If they're, I mean, we saw one apartment complex that their parking was all pushed to the east because it was in the floodplain, and you can't put a building, so it makes sense. So I understand that. But what we can say is, hey, as long as you have this much parking, we're good, but we want it within 300 feet. If you can't meet it within 300 feet, you better have a good reason why you can't meet
Do
that.
you want to have all of it or just a number of them within, or do we say at least one
No.
assigned? Do we want to do a
So
sign?
if
Say
it's
they have to have a
if
sign.
it's a 24 unit building, they have to meet their parking requirement per their building within that 300 feet.
Okay.
I don't
So-
know. What is
So if I have 6 different complexes, they have to design it in such a way that there's enough parking around each one of those instead of trying to cluster the buildings all together. And then,
And the
what I
parking.
call the sporting event parking,
Yeah.
where you park 5 miles away and walk to the football game. We've all been there, right? And we don't want to do that. So
What I like about that, because I was struggling with it because of the constraints of sites, but with that asterisk, it gives them a reason to justify it to the council. And they can, it's not a separate submittal. It's just, here's my application. And in like an example of a presentation is, okay, they met it. They're not within the 300 feet. They're a couple short here, but they would ask the council because of site constraints. And typically we'd be okay with it, but what we don't want is an egregious one that, like Drew just said, put it all in the back corner and all the buildings are right here and it's just a pain to get to them. We want to spread the parking out around the buildings. So,
There's multiple benefits to that. Safety, convenience.
well, and just human nature does it.
Yeah.
Now on the visitor parking, I didn't want to contribute it to that because if you have a friend coming over, they can go park far away and get to your house, right? But the other thing that Jeremy and I were talking about was, is most apartments assign those parking stalls, but I don't want to get in the business of apartments and how they do it. But we currently don't have that in the code, but we might say you have to assign parking stalls to your residents and let them decide how they assign them. They can assign 1, they can assign 2. And typically they do because we require covered parking. So they assign those to each unit, at least 1. I know my sister-in-law lives in one and that's what they did. They assigned 1 covered parking and the rest is open game. So
now, do you want covered parking at every one? Because our code is required at every development. It hasn't. It's like apartments do not require 1 covered parking. Do you want to require that in all scenarios? Because we don't currently. I know we may think that we do, but when you go read the current one, apartments don't have to have a covered parking. It's when you get into a duplex that doesn't have garages, then you have to have that 1 covered, because that's how we do all residential things. So I'm just clarifying that for you.
I didn't realize that. For some reason,
That's why I wanted to ask, you as a council want to require at least 1 covered stall for everybody. I don't know if we do, but
I don't know.
I know that's what you may want to.
I thought you had to on apartments. So if we don't,
Apartments you don't.
do in adjacent cities.
I think at some point it becomes the issue of the apartment and the competition, right? If you want to provide that, you provide it. If
Yeah.
not, it's not really a health safety issue. It's not really it's one of those convenience issues that we could look at, but it probably may not fall under our jurisdiction we could, but
Well, I don't want to increase more costs.
that's what it would do, right?
No,
If somebody
so
I say you leave it like it is. If it's a townhome that's private ownership, we require them to have 1 covered.
Okay.
Okay,
It's
but
the-
if it's
for the
apartments and
apartment.
it's
All right.
because they're renting and everything, we don't. Some of them put them in because they want to beat the guy down the street that's offering the same kind of product, but they have a better, package for them. So I think we leave that as it is if everybody's good with that, because I think it's been working well. But I can come back and add that they have to have that part, for each unit they have to have. You want 300 feet? Does that sound? That's still a pretty good area. I think they can still hit that.
I know that that's been rules in other places is 300 feet.
That's what
I
most
just
of
I
them
just
grab.
threw it off my memory. I don't know if it's a good number or not, but
It's like a
It's
football
easier
field.
for them to hit.
It
I
is
think
a
it's a
foot- yeah.
target that makes it more hittable, but makes them from putting out the football field parking.
and if
So
I would say let's start with 300, and if we have an apartment that has an issue, then and we keep seeing them, they're like, hey, or is this not attainable?
Well, that asterisk still allows them to come to you and say, hey, I ran into a problem and here's why. And then you can say, oh yeah, we get that. We'll be okay with this. So I think if we put the asterisk there for that or anything else, they can still, I just hope that everybody doesn't come in wanting a special relief, but they will.
Council, how are we feeling about this one? Are we feeling like we're going the right direction? Or do we need more discussion? Or are we past experience tells us that this is the spot we've asked for.
I think they'll just come and ask for special exceptions, so we'll be discussing parking anyways.
It's only location.
But the difference is they're only discussing, like Drew said, location. There's the
not
parking,
quantity.
the quantity, and now we don't have to have any more discussion about quantity. It's, did you meet the code? Yes, and we move on.
And we feel comfortable not having to add stuff that's not in the code. I think that's why we was driving this, because we kept feeling, man, we like the project, but it just seems we want a little more parking. With this, it gets it up to where we felt comfortable with the parking. Now everybody can move forward with it, but it's all about location, not number, is what they can ask for as help. And I think everybody'd be okay with that.
And it may help in their design to understand this and
Yep.
realize that it's important.
So you want me to write it up 2 weeks, put that?
That's what I would like. I think we're
Is
ready,
everybody good with
unless
that?
the council isn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like the idea of having them say, did you meet it? Then we move on. I like that.
Well, I think with the proximity thing, I think we'll get to a point where we are even changing the number of parking stalls if it's proximity. So we'll watch it and may change it again.
Okay. I'll find a good place to put that in there and get that the asterisks and within the 300 feet.
Great. Thank you, Drew. Item 4, growth percentage for impact fees. City Manager Jeremy Redd, and I think Lester's helping out on this as well.
Lester's going to do most of this.
Got 20 minutes, so we'll go to 5:35.
Lester's from LOA. He can speak really quickly, but I think most of you probably read my slides. Hopefully we read them all ahead of time. But the idea here is we're getting ready to do impact fees again, and we kind of are always doing them because of the cycles. But one of the things that we want to look at are what the growth rate is. That's really what we're looking at tonight. And we may not have to make a decision, but we all might be able to nod and at least get Lester going. I wanted to just really quick, for those who are here and for the residents who are here, talk really quickly about impact fees. But if you already read these, it'll be quicker. I think we all know impact fees are a one-time charge. They're mitigating impact on local infrastructure, only new development. They maintain the same level and quality that you had before you started. And they're only the facilities that are necessary to accommodate new growth. I think this gets confused a lot of times, but we can only use it for permanent buildings and other physical facilities owned by the local government, which have a lifespan of 10 years or more. So mostly capital projects, a fire truck, something like that, that's 10 years or more.
So this would include a fire truck, but this wouldn't include a patrol car.
We don't include patrol cars in this.
What's the difference between, why would it be a fire truck but not vehicles?
It's a heavy equipment issue. So I would say these are regulated. These are regulated 100% by the state. They choose exactly what we can and can't do. Did you have a?
We've only got one patrol car that's older than 10 years, and it's like a Ford Mustang from 92. So the patrol cars cycle pretty regularly because of the amount of mileage and use they get on them. They're a short-term asset.
There's a huge cost
Considered
difference as well.
a maintenance issue more than a capital item.
And
yeah,
cost,
no, that's really
Jeremy?
good.
And cost as well.
That's right.
Fire truck costs a lot more.
Yeah. So I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but impact fees are assessed only on new homes and businesses, only to maintain service levels, and they're used for new infrastructure needed to service new growth. So they're not assessed on any existing residents or any existing businesses or any existing homes. They are not used to increase service levels, and you have to use them on infrastructure that would not be necessary if it weren't for the new growth. So as we're doing these plans, if growth stopped tomorrow, our impact fees would stop, but so would all of the projects that they're funded with. So I think that's really important to understand. Again, they're used to build facilities infrastructure associated only with that fee. So they're not dumped into the general fund. They are kept separate. They're tracked really carefully, and they are not used for maintenance or replacement of existing facilities or infrastructure. So if we have a a park that we decide we want to rebuild, can't use impact fees to rebuild them. And we also, as much as we wish we could, we can't use them to correct existing service deficiencies. So if we don't build the facilities for new growth and that creates a deficiency, we can't go back and use the new fees for that. So what Lester is working on right now is the capital facilities plan for water, which is analysis of our existing facilities, our levels of service, and he has to pick an anticipated growth rate and what demands are going to be created by the new development. We also he has to pick where he thinks the new development is going to occur, which is a little bit of a guess, but that's important. And then we have to do this in order to assess an impact fee. So we look at it, this is as good as I can get drawing things. This is, you take your growth percentage, and that growth percentage drives you to the projects that you're going to need to facilitate that growth in your community, which drives you to a cost of the growth projects. So how many people are coming, what projects are we going to need for those people to come, and how much will they cost us? This is one that's hurting us right now because of inflation. Project that we did 5 years ago is a lot more expensive than what we're projecting now. So we take the cost of all the growth projects, we divide that by the number of new units that we're anticipating, and that gives us the maximum impact fee amount that we can charge per unit. So I think one of the things that you look at here, and the reason that we want to make sure we really are picking a growth rate that matches what we think is going to happen, is because if we undershoot or overshoot the growth rate, we either undershoot or overshoot the projects and the costs, and it messes up the impact fee amount for the people that come. You can fill in what I missed, but Lester has a lot of good information as far as growth rate.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. More than anything, what this comes down to is this is step one of the impact fee analysis. It drives the entire plan. The growth rate is the key component associated with it. Hopefully you guys got a chance to look at the briefing document that I put together, as well as the tables that were there behind it. This go around, we actually looked at it a little bit differently. Typically, for the water impact fee analysis, we're looking specifically at usually just connections, because that's the only data set that we've had in the past that's got any kind of accuracy to it. You know, the census data, you know, everybody's aware that's up, that's down. You know, it's not really true as to what's happening with Washington City local, and that's what we're trying to get a handle on. And you know, ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish is to get as realistic a growth rate percentage from the past, so that we can project that forward, knowing full well that as time goes on, we get more and more, you know, population within Washington City. Naturally, that progression in a percentage basis is going to go down. Even though it's more people, the actual percentage of growth goes down. So every time we go through this analysis, we have a tendency to start based upon the past, knowing that we're going to anticipate it to reduce, unless we've got something that's coming up that really makes us think that it's going to excel for some odd reason that may be there. But looking at it historically, you know, we've got 6 years worth of data that goes back to connections, population projections that we've used, that we've reported to the state. We've also we have included the census data because it does have some credence. There is some components in there that make a lot of sense to use. And this year, for the first time, we've actually had some building permit data with some history to it that seems to be pretty accurate on the overall. And it's a little more accurate from a perspective of how many units can we really put into this equation instead of just number of connections. For example, you know, the apartment complexes that we've had, some of these townhome communities, that kind of stuff, they'll come in with a single connection. So with our past history, we were just using number of connections. That single connection actually equates to multiple indoor uses. So I feel it's prudent that we use all of these data sets and come up with a realistic average based upon them. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to kind of digest some of the data that was provided to you. But ultimately, based upon the past 6 years of data and kind of lumping this all together and look at an overall average of all of these 4 data sets, we're coming up with about a 6.9% growth rate. If we look at any of them individually, you know, I've provided that data to you as well. And interestingly enough, our history of using the number of connections is really close. But I think we need to try and capture some of that multi-unit growth that has been occurring and make sure that we're accommodating it as well. So kind of what I'm looking for more than anything is just kind of a feel from council is, does that seem reasonable to you before we progress any farther into this capital facilities plan? Because this is the driving force behind the entire plan, and this water master plan has a tendency to trickle down into the sewer master plan, you know, our upcoming irrigation master plan, our stormwater master plans. You know,
What happens
all of
to the
that.
impact fee rate, to the, the builder or the applicant for the building permit, if we overestimate or if we underestimate growth?
Ultimately, what it boils down to is the growth projection is going to drive how many projects. I mean, how many projects we need to accommodate that growth. Well, that drives a price tag associated with it. If you take
But
that
you're still
price
dividing
tag,
it by the number of.
exactly, you're working on both sides of the equation with the growth rate, because if the price tag's at 10, you're using a growth rate of 7, it's gonna work on both sides. That percentage equates on both sides. So if we don't have the growth percentage, we don't need to build the projects. Hence, we don't ever get there, because it takes this many units in order to accommodate this many projects. If we didn't create this many units, we didn't need to build that many projects.
So I'm going to talk to the council just for a minute on this. And so this is something that's been weighing heavily on Jeremy's mind. And we've looked at, the Ken C. Gardner Institute, we've looked at census data, we've looked at the growth projections, but with this kind of volatile market, as he and I talked about it, we really wanted to get the council's input and direction on this, because it makes a difference. And so I think really the point of this was to give Lester, as the water manager, some direction on saying, do you feel like 6.9% is, I know 8% was what the Gardner Institute showed us for the last 10 years, right? But as we get larger, we'd have to have a higher number of units to continue that percentage. So I'm wondering if maybe that's why this in some are projecting to slow down, but I don't think we necessarily are. I don't know. That's why we want your input.
So Mayor, as Jeremy had mentioned that before, that was a very important number. And the way I look at it is that there's 3 driving factors of what our future population is going to be. It's going to be those that pass on, birth rate, but in our circumstance, migration. In migration. And that is we can base the others on facts and figures. They're pretty, but the in-migration is what, that I would just ask that your data is more research based on what that looks like. I mean, yeah, we all know the current climate with inflation, but yet we still seem to be an outlier for a lot of that where we live and what we offer here. But I would just add that probably migration would be the most important thing for me personally in setting this number.
Can I add an interesting fact? So we had a meeting with Envision Utah a week or so ago, and the Institute was there and presented. And interestingly enough, this last year was the first time in Utah history when in-migration outpaced natural birth. So we're seeing more people moving here than being born here.
But that was my question I have. So Lester, I'm looking at the percentages on year, and 2021 was a huge year, right? Like we had 9%, 9.1%. Is that an outlier we shouldn't be counting because it was such a different type of year than what we've seen? So it's just a question, so I took all of them except last year because it was so high compared to the other one. And I don't know if that's going to be continued in our trend, or should we exclude that one because it was weird and it came to 6.5. I'm just throwing that out there.
And I actually looked at this, and I threw out all of the low liars and the high liars just to see what would happen with the projections. It changed it by a 0.2. So if and that's statistically that's a standard practice. You'll throw out the bottom end, you'll throw out the top end, and you'll look at the middle. And the reality is it only changed it by a 0.2. It dropped us down to a 6.7 instead of a 6.9. And that high liar that you're seeing there, what that equated to was all the apartment units that went in. When you're seeing that 13.8, that was all the apartments that went in, and that's where that high liar really sticks out on the building permit data.
Lester, I think you're on the right track. That sounds pretty good to me. So fun fact for you, the first house I built was a total impact fees of $3,000. Can you get us down there, Lester? Can you get us back there?
I'm pretty sure that's probably not going to happen. Our
Okay.
current impact fee for just water distribution, this doesn't cover the source of the district tax on there, but our current water impact fee is at $2,412 per unit.
I think we're paying, 35,000 total. Some of the houses. Yeah,
Well, and
with Water Conservancy added.
Honestly, the really concerning point that I've got is, once we put these projects together and say that this is what we need, and then we look at the dollars that it's going to cost, this inflation that we've seen that has been just unbelievable, it's going to really show up in the next little while as we're working through this.
Appreciate your work, Lester. Thanks.
It's such an interesting thing too, because I think we have a lot more apartments coming, not less. At least we have applications for them. And if we could get that rate down, if we could get everyone to grow in one spot with water lines and water tanks, then we'd only have to build
No
this
sprawl.
much at a time. But that's part of our problem. If we don't plan for that growth, then when they come and build a water tank, they get impact fee credits. Well, we better have planned for that tank and this tank and this tank. But if we could keep everyone, right on one system, it would help. But it's a tricky thing. It's a moving target. Lester does a good job, and others in his position. So,
And I would just add too, and this as a council, but these impact fee analysis, these impact fee studies aren't set in stone. So if in a couple of years we need to readdress it, we can do that. Closing thoughts, Councilmember Martinson and Casperson, if you have any on this topic. Anything else, Jeremy or Lester?
Thank you, Mark, Council.
Great. So I'll call for a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then we'll reconvene at 6 p.m.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion by Ivy,
Second.
second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, that's what I was talking 2 weeks ago. No. So I just made note of like 12 of those that I found. That's what we gotta look at. not quite there yet.
All right, we'll get started momentarily. I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Washington City regular council meeting. We're here in Washington City Hall, the City Council chambers. Today is Wednesday, December 26th, and our meeting is also broadcast live on our YouTube station, washingtoncity.org/meetings. We appreciate the Interfaith Council and appreciate Father David Bittman from the St. George Catholic Church being here and being willing to say a few words and lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Lord God, you gathered us together so that we may promote the common good. You give us wisdom, you give us courage, you give us patience, you give us pardon, give us the gifts we need to work one with another so that we can grow closer to you and each other through the good works that we deliberate and we ponder. We ask your blessings on us all. Make our prayer through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Thank you, Father. We appreciate you and all the good work you do in our community. I've invited Lieutenant Corey Klotz to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd come forward, Lieutenant.
All right. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I call for a motion to approve the agenda, I'll just make note that council that we do have need to go into closed sessions for item 11A and 11B, which is the purchase, exchange, or lease of property and pending or potential litigation. That said, I'll call for a motion of the agenda as outlined.
Mayor, I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
The motion by Councilman Coates.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Move on to item number 2, which is announcements. This Friday and Saturday, October 28th and 29th, will be the Ironman World Championships. The professional women will be on Friday and the professional men on Saturday. And as part of our support for that event, the council, the mayor and council will have an Ironman watch party on the north end of Main Street where it intersects Washington Parkway. That'll be from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And there'll be a free continental breakfast and music and just a lot of fun. So bring a camp chair, something to sit on, and cowbells. And I think we have some cowbells and things, and I think you have some shirts. It'll be a lot of fun. We also just want to say thank you to police officers and public works and all those who'll be working traffic, and it's a lot of sacrifice to close the roads and support a big event like that. And I know this is the second, third one this year. So Also, on Thursday, November 3rd, from 11 to 1:30, there is a meeting titled Meeting the Attainable Housing Shortage. It's at the Dixie Convention Center. I know Jordan Hess will be presenting there, our public affairs officer, and we'll have a panel of other community leaders that will look for solutions that I know you're also searching for. On that night, Thursday, November 3rd, from 6 to 8 p.m., at the Washington Area Chamber is hosting the Rock and Roll Gala. And so we have tables for those who have RSVP'd for that. And then I typically just go to the next council meeting, but I did want to just step into November 11th on Veterans Day. That's a big event for Washington. And so we'll have the parade on the typical parade route. We'll line up on 300 East by the Community Center, and we'll come along the parade route. That starts at 11 a.m. and following that, we'll have a Veterans Day program at noon here in Veterans Park. And in that program will include a special recognition for Cold War era veterans, where they'll be receiving a certificate and a medal for their service during that tense time. Council, am I missing anything? Is there anything else that should be announced?
Mayor, would you just mention who our Grand Marshal is?
Oh, Councilman, you'd do better than me. I remember you've told me about him, you and Councilmember Casperson, but why don't one of you say that?
So our Grand Marshal for Veterans Day this year is 105-year-old Sergeant Clifton Spenlove. He served in the Pacific Theater and helped to liberate Plzeň, Czechoslovakia. And Mayor, I just have a couple of things. A good friend to the city and to the community, Tyler Hunsaker with our Rotary Club. He is taking employment out of the area, so he'll be moving. There's a little event for him, going away party at the Washington Area Chamber, 3 to 5 on Friday. And then I just wanted to remind everyone about Crimson Cliffs football game, playoff game, 7 o'clock at home for them. So this is a state playoff game. So let's go support our herd, right?
Love it. Anything else, Council? Great. We'll move on to item 3, declarations of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, which is the consent agenda. 4A is consideration to approve the minutes from City Council meeting 10/12/22. 4B, consideration to approve a final plat for Labyrinth Point at Long Valley Phase 2 on Long Valley Road and Lost Springs Drive. Item 4C is consideration to approve a final plat for Estates at Burke Springs Phase 2, located at Viewpoint Drive and Leora Drive. Item 4D, consideration to approve a final plat for Shooting Star Phase 4 at Pleiades Way. 4E is consideration to approve a final plat for Laurel Ridge Phase 1 at Desert Ridge Drive and 1100 East. And 4F is consideration to approve a final plat for Horizon Cove Minor at 260 North, 300 East. Council, unless there's minor clarification or something to be pulled out, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, just a minor clarification on E. I just want to clarify with the council that the Hillside did meet on this item, this specific item, and this was approved. The adjoining property to the south of this was one that was in an area of concern. So just making sure that we're clear on that.
Great. Anything else? Call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion by Councilman Coates.
Second.
Second by Councilman Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to item number 5, public hearings. Are there any in the audience who are here to speak to item 5A or 5B? Are they here to speak to these public hearings? Okay, great. We'll give it the spill then. So I will let you know that the mayor and council prepares for these meetings, and they read the packet, and we receive electronic public comment, but there was none submitted on items 5A or 5B. And just as a reminder, this is an opportunity for the council to listen and consider public feedback. After I open the public hearing, any wishing to speak to a specific item, please remember to state your name for the record and to address the mayor and council as such. Please keep your comments on topic, not repetitive to something that has already been said, and concise. Most well-spoken public comments can be made within about 2 to 3 minutes. Clapping or yelling after comments is never appropriate in a public meeting. And then council, as always, I ask you and staff to listen and take notes during the public hearing. I will give you and the applicant an opportunity to speak after I close the public hearing. So item 5A is a public hearing and consideration to approve height waiver HW-22-05 for a hotel located at 70 North Green Spring Drive. The applicant is R&R Development. Per our ordinance, height waivers only come to the council, so we will have the public hearing here, and I'll let Community Development Director Drew Ellerman speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant is requesting a waiver from the maximum height of buildings allowed for a structure in the current service commercial or C2 zoning district that this particular property falls in. The location is at approximately, as stated, 70 North Green Springs Drive. The maximum allowable height, as per the zoning regulations, is 45 feet in all commercial zones. The applicant is seeking approval to extend the height of their proposed new hotel building to 58 feet at its highest point. That would include the screening of all roof-mounted equipment. So that's what's before you tonight. I just showed you the site plan is on your screen. Just below it here, you can see my arrow bouncing around. It's the new Maverick, that's kind of under construction. Hopefully we'll see some vertical stuff here real soon, but it's that parcel just due north of it. I'll pull down and we'll bring up the building. Just giving you, it's a 4-story building, and then with, again, parapets and with roof-mounted equipment they wanted to go. You can see that stated, for the top of the parapets is at 54.4, but they know they're going to have roof-mounted equipment up top, and they will screen it, so they're asking for the 58 feet to be far above and beyond what they'll need at that point. So be glad to answer what I can of your questions.
Drew, what's the hotel to the north height? That had a height waiver as well.
That had a height waiver, and I think it was around 52 or 4. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but I remember it was right in the
4
low
stories
50s.
as well.
It was 4 on one end, 3 on the other, because they had an elevation change in theirs as well. So it is 4 on the one end and 3 on the other end of it. So most people have been coming in getting about 54 to 56 is what, the council's, given out in previous commercial buildings. So like that Class A building that just had their groundbreaking, I think was at 56 we awarded. So.
Sure, these levels, are they standard plate height?
It appears, as I'm looking at just the, every floor seems to be at 10 feet. So probably 9, that's going to be standard, very standard plate heights on that.
Councilman Ivy, the bottom floor is 15, and then they go 10 from there.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing on this item. Any wishing to speak to the height waiver request, please come forward.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Neil Shepard. Like in all meetings with the government or with education, everybody has their mind already intact. Either you approve or you don't approve it. But most meetings I've been in, you people have already made your decision. You're going to be approving this height waiver. I'm pretty well confident that that's going to be the case. You have to follow the money. And the money always dictates what happens to Washington City. You're going to be putting this hotel right next to another hotel. What does that do for our quality of life? I live right across the street in Chaparral. Okay, my property value is already down about $40,000 to $50,000. Why? Because you put a commercial piece of real estate across the street that should have gone into homes. Big mistake. Number one. When I go into my living room and my rec room, it's like sunset, sunrise. There is virtually no darkness because of the lights around there right now. And with the added hotel coming in and with the new Maverick coming in, it's going to be like sunrise in my house. You people don't have to live there. I do. Okay, the traffic there, 8:30 in the morning, is getting to be a nightmare. There's homes north of us, and people come down, they come down to work, and I have to wait 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, that's expected. But in Washington City, they should be a rural place of business. I don't think so. But it's changing, and it's changing dramatically. You people don't have to live across there. I have to live across there. We've had a resident go up on Lion's Head. He basically was up there for 2 weeks in his tent, and I finally called the city police, and they went up and they rousted him out of there. We're getting more and more people walking in my backyard. When the Maverick gets there, it's going to be a total nightmare. You people don't have to live there. I have to live there. And then my last comment is, St. George is out of water. Washington is out of water. St. George has allocated the Hurricane Fault for 16 different sites to punch into the ground to see if they can get more water. And the people in Torkerville, Laverton, Canaryville are up in arms about it. You people are out of water and you continually put up more residents. You better think about what you're doing. My home right now is currently for sale. That's what you've done to me. You don't care, you just follow the money. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to item 5A? This is a public hearing specific to a height waiver. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn to the council for further discussion and or a motion on item 5A.
I think Mr. Shepherd spoke to one of my concerns with that intersection. Having been up on that side of the freeway for not as long as Councilman Henderson has, but it's been almost 19 years now, and we've seen it go from a one-way stop sign to now a stoplight to constant congestion at that interchange. That's my biggest concern with this one. And I know we're approving the height waiver, but I do have a massive concern with the traffic right there at that intersection, especially with the Maverick coming in, with it going to be I mean, we're not talking Maverick right now, but with that, a truck stop in addition to this hotel, in addition to the
So the good thing is it's not going to be a truck stop because there's no way station. So we're good there, but it is a larger Maverick, correct? Larger than the Chevron that was there for sure.
Correct.
Please, sir.
So that's just a concern that I do have with that. I love the idea of a hotel. I was on planning commission with the previous hotel that did get approved there, and it was a very similar discussion that happened.
Thank you, Councilman. Further thoughts, further comments on this item? Just maybe to address yours, I will tell you that there is progress on the exit 11 interchange, and they anticipate that to go out to bid the first part of December. And the intent for that is to relieve some of that congestion, and certainly we've had that, widening there as well. But anyway, that's just kind of for the record. Further discussion or a motion on this item?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a height waiver HW-22-05 for a hotel located at 70 North Green Spring Drive.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivy.
Second.
A second by Councilman Coates. We'll go roll call vote. Casperson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Nay.
Is approved 4-1. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 5B. This is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-22-23, amending the Sienna Hills PCD parcels 10A through F. And this is typically per our updated public hearing ordinance. Most public hearings only occur at the Plan Commission, but on ordinances that are for PCDs, those still come to the city council. So that's why this one's here with this body tonight. And we'll let Community Development Director Drew Ellerman speak to this item.
And thank you, Mayor. Applicants request an approval to amend portions of the Sienna Hills PCD specifically found in section 3.11 signage of the Sienna Hills project plan book, and also an amendment to the zoning comparison chart, and we'll get into that. So more specifically, the amendment is to revise section 3.11 signage, specifically commercial signage found within parcels 10A through F, which will amend the approved master sign plan as well. The proposal is to revise the language, specifically commercial language, found again in parcel 10. That's the one that's basically the one that Troy Bellison is working on. It's right where the roundabout is, so it's kind of that, I always get mixed up, so it's east of that roundabout, but between the freeway and Grapevine crossing there. So it would only affect that's parcels A through F in that area. So right now, they want to amend paragraph 2. At no time shall any blinking, animated, inflatable, flashing, or roof mounted, and this is the only change, it goes on after this, but unless authorized below in this section, signs be displayed in Sienna Hills, ... It doesn't change anything else. We just had to put this particular area in there unless authorized below because of paragraph 3, that is the new language they want to propose to bring in. And that reads as stated, subject to city staff design review and Sienna Hills commercial DRC approval. Commercial business signage in parcels 10A through F may have rock or rock-like features and may extend past the parapet of the buildings or may be roof mounted. And again, just because of the location of it, they first brought that to me, Mr. Belliston did. I'm usually not a big fan of roof mounted or above parapet. But then 2 days after he brought that in, and he probably got a bad vibe from me, I think he could tell, but I decided I was going to come into work down I-15. Usually I come down Telegraph, right up there. I come in from Hurricane and come down Telegraph, but I thought I'm going to go the interstate. And as I look down on that property, I go, now I can see why they might want to utilize roof-mounted signage or stuff, because of the proximity of that property with a lot of that freeway traffic. It sits so far below, and I could see where that would be a utilization. And if we kept everything down below or on just the regular walls, that it wouldn't stand out, and we all know that we want interchange 13 to just pop. I mean, that can be one of the most dynamic interchanges. It will be when all said and done. That is our plan of anywhere in southern Utah as far as I'm concerned. So I started thinking about that and felt a whole lot more comfortable. And then I, started thinking about some places. I'm an Arizona boy. I'm used to the Valley of the Sun, and they have a lot of places where they'll go up and just do some signage. It doesn't look gaudy or anything, but in appropriate places. I thought, it's probably not a bad thing. So I started loosening my thought on it, and thought, with all the different features of what this has, if it's done rightly, and again, it's going to be reviewed by the city and by basically SITLA as the other group. We're not going to let anything kind of ugly go popping in there. I think between the two bodies that will look at that. So it is subject to that, and we'll keep an eye. So I became kind of fine with this proposal coming through. So that's on the signage. The other part of this amendment is right here in the zoning comparison chart, and I'm just going to zoom in over here, and it only deals with, again, the neighborhood commercial and the freeway commercial, and that's basically everything out there. I mean, I didn't mind it going in other stuff, but the freeway commercial is that pod 10, that area 10, and I didn't mind even the neighborhood happening. So what the proposal is to just have these setbacks. You can see the area highlighted, and this is just front, side, and rear setback areas. That this will be determined in the SDR, if you go down to the bottom, stands for City Staff Design Review must be addressed on a case-by-case basis at the design review stage. What this is going to allow is that we're going to try to get buildings out towards street frontages and parking in the back. This allows that we have some freedom to move that around. and do what we tried to do on this downtown mixed use zone was, allow some closer side property, setbacks, et cetera, on a case by case basis. We're not going to say you can do it every time. We'll look at its proximity to, say, a corner or a radius on a road. And we'll take all those things in, but it allows them a little bit more freedom to get the setbacks, not just be where it forces almost to put parking out in front and the buildings in the back. And so this one I really didn't have much issue with, because this is kind of what we wanted to do in some of our commercial zones anyway. And I thought, what better place to show how it can happen and what it can do by doing this in these particular areas. And it's not a lot of big area that we have to really worry about, but again, it's only here in those two zones. So that's the changes that they're proposing before you, is just that signage to allow some different, things there. And again, because of location, and to be able to have some freedoms on the setbacks in the commercial zone. Staff's fully supportive of it. And then we moved that on, and the Planning Commission reviewed it, held a public hearing. The Planning Commission on their October 5th, again, held that public hearing. And then afterwards, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-22-23 for the zone change request, amending portions of the Sienna Hills project plan and amending section 3.11 signage, and also the zoning comparison chart. And that was on to you, the city council. And again, and based on the findings and the conditions below. And again, the conditions just state, these are the only changes that are taking place on this. The verbiage in the signing, adding what we saw in the red there, and then changing these setback signs to staff design review. And again, plus, let me try to find those. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council has.
Council questions, comments for staff?
Drew, do you have an example of, because it says may have rock or rock-like features may extend past the parapet of the building? Is that?
Well, the rock-like, they wanted to be able to do some rock-like just signage. That's not per se. They brought me a sign to put out at
But it's under, we're talking only about signs here.
Right.
And so is our current sign say ordinance says they can't?
I think aren't those separate signs,
one
Drew?
doesn't allow it.
Aren't those separate, the rock-like features, and then or may extend above the
Right,
parapet?
but they can use more rock-like features, where right now the Sienna Hills master sign approval doesn't. And they wanted to bring in some more unique features for that area and incorporate some nice faux rock with entrance signs, et cetera. So we wanted to put that in there just to be able to allow it to get it not tied directly to that approved signage plan that was done 15 years ago. At that time, those signs looked neat, and that's really unique compared to the area. But now they feel outdated, and so this just gives them more freedom to do some more natural looking stuff and things that they want to use. So it's just the faux rock type stuff that they would use in that.
So they're looking at maybe some signs down on ground level, and then maybe some
Monument type thing with a pillar of a faux rock that would go up and grab your
I
attention.
think I may have seen a rendition of that. It looked very nice. So
Yeah.
with these setbacks, we're still going to maintain the sidewalk, the 10-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, I've told them I'm going to maintain that 10-foot landscape strip no matter what. So you're not going to get any closer than those on a street frontage, because I really like that strip there. It gives you a buffer. So that's the closest they would get to the back of the cross section, where that ownership is.
Is that in our code that says it has to be the 10 feet? Because I'm not opposed to street frontage buildings right on the sidewalk.
Well, this actually allows them to do so if they showed something that worked real great. No, and I like what you say, because then you can do the cafe that's right off the sidewalk, right? Where you go off of that, and they can put a little outdoor seating.
But you just said you weren't going to let them except have the 10-foot landscaping. So I'm saying who's dictating?
It depends on which way he drives to work. If he's driving to work
that's
on
my
the freeway.
concern.
But this allows, I'm going to try to maintain that. But if someone came in with a project that looked like that could go there, we would probably do that.
So if you come down the freeway, you can get your building this way. But if you go Telegraph, you get your building this way.
Well, we're in a PCD as well.
Well, I get that. I just want to make sure that we're clear that 10-foot rule is not just Drew's rule. It's the city's ordinance, but they're asking for a 0 setback.
Well, if they're going to come and put the back of a building right next to the edge of the road, I don't think any of us would want to see that.
I know, but how do we determine that? Because when are we going to see it? In a
Well, in
site
some
plan or
cases, you won't see that.
I know, that's my point.
What does do you have examples of what the parapet might look like, the signage above the parapet? And that's okay.
Probably
I
not.
just-
I mean, I was just going to go back to your hotel thing and just imagine a sign that goes up above that.
Would
It's
that be a
kind of-
lit sign typically?
More than likely would
and they
be a
would
lit-
rise up above the
Yes.
kind of with the fascia, so to speak.
And
of
then it
the-
might be more, letters that are just on their own, not with being in a box.
Not a
thing and
welcome to
written
Las
on it.
Vegas kind of.
No, well, you can, there's some neat signs out there. I don't want to say that we won't ever. It gets back to the point you just made. I
What
don't wanna-
discretion? I mean, you're going to have some discretion in the site plan. What discretion would you have in the signage then? I guess. I mean, because if I read it right, anyway, the council votes on this, but that's a
Yeah.
question I had.
Well, I mean, the discretion is we can use it. It's not going to be just me. We may, I don't want to have that just be where I felt in a good mood one day or not in a good mood the other day. I think we'll use it, in the department. If they want to keep pushing, I'll bring other people along inside. If there's times we may want to grab a counter, just put it out there and say, hey, what do you think about this?
So I'll just have and let everyone else talk. I'll finish up. And the other thing is on the roof mounted, I'm just imagining this like beat down pizza shack that has some crazy sign up there. It's just, I'm struggling with the roof mounted without more detail.
But I'm going to tell you, have you been to San Francisco?
No, I'm not.
I wish
I'm
you
not
had,
sad about
because
that
anybody
either.
who's been to San Fran, I know, but I grew up in the Bay Area. Okay, so I remember some of the neatest looking places that I came across just as a kid in my memory. Had these really awesome roof mounted signs. I'm just saying we want to leave
I get
the,
that. I haven't seen and I just need some examples maybe, but usually I see them on the building. I see them adjacent to the building, but I've never seen a well-mounted roof sign. It's just,
we'll have to find you some because there are some neat
and
features.
if there is, that's
Yeah.
great. Like I said, I'm just getting nervous that
They almost get into architectural features is what they do. It's kind of designed that way. It's not just, because I wouldn't just trust hope I'm not going to offend any sign companies, but most sign companies I would not trust to do a really neat, roof mounted sign. I think an architect, with the sign company can create a lot, some really unique popping features that, people just catch your eye and go, wow.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's what we're
interesting
looking for.
when you come down that freeway through that cut. I've driven home from up north at night, and it's interesting how much those signs you kind of drop in elevation. That McDonald's, the Golden Arches, really stick out. So as you as the council considering what that parapet sign might be, I think it's going to be very noticed, right? From depending on how it looks and how it shines.
And the gentlemen at Sitla and their personalities, they're on the signage side, between everybody involved, it'll go through a vetting process.
So I like the idea of giving some flexibility. And I think we're going to see a lot of roof because they sit way down below the freeway. And I think, like you said, Drew, we'll probably see some of these rooftop signs kind of incorporated into the architectural part of the building, which may help to hide some of those rooftops a little bit. So I like the idea of giving some flexibility. And like you said, Drew, I think it's in everybody's best interest to make sure that those buildings pop. This is going to be a showcase for Washington City on exit 13. So I like the idea of flexibility there with the signage. So
As long as it's not the bright neon sign that McDonald's has in front of their parking lot, because I've gotten several complaints from neighbors about that one.
I have too, by the way.
Well, I've told them they need, because those are supposed to be on auto dimmers, those animated ones. So that's the beauty in Senate Hills. You can't have an animated sign of any kind. Okay. So, but this one is, and it's breaking the law. And I've told the owner, you got to get that taken care of. I just don't think the programming person is having an issue with it. So I'm gonna have to turn up the heat.
Middle school too.
I must be.
That's bad.
Okay.
Mayor, pull
reel it back in here.
Yeah.
So this is a public hearing. Applicant, I'm happy to give you an opportunity to speak after the public hearing if that's okay. I don't think anyone's here even to speak to this item. But if there are, I'm officially opening the public hearing now. Would you come forward and state your name for the record and give us your thoughts on this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward if he would like. You know the routine.
Good evening, Council. Troy Bellison. So as we were going through, the PCD, the way it's written, and some of the design stuff, these two items came up. One, the setbacks. To the question, Councilman Coates, on how close it's going to be. Right now, the road profile for Grapevine Crossing is 25 feet back of curb is where the lot starts. And so at a bare minimum, you're going to have 25 feet back of curb, which includes 2 landscape strips and that 10-foot pathway. But the challenge was the PCD was written with 30 and sometimes 40-foot setbacks from there, right? So I'd like to push those buildings up and put parking behind it rather than have parking out in front, right? So,
And I'm for that. I just wanted to make sure we were contradicting ourselves in our discussions.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
there's certainly no attempt to get rid of trails or sidewalks or, push the buildings up, right? So, and the other one is, it drives me crazy driving down I-15 and looking across at the commercial projects and seeing just roof and rooftop mechanicals. So and I'm happy to bring examples in if you like, or email some, but really this just opens the door to say, if the council says, no, we don't want any rooftop signage, well, I'm not going to go spend time and money to design it, right? So, but where we are so far below I-15, I'd like to hide some of those mechanicals and at least give something, to draw the eye that's not just, rooftop, right? That's what you get right now when you go down I-15. When you go past Best Buy, you can see Best Buy, but you don't see any of the other signs for any of those businesses, and you see right across the roof and see all the mechanicals, and I just don't care for that. So the last one with the rock-like features was, I submitted a permit for an entry feature and it got denied because not allowed. So if we could do that, then that would be nice.
So questions for the applicant?
So Troy, you're going to have a sign down at the ground level, right? How high will that one be? Are you planning one?
For the entry?
Yeah, for your entry.
Oh yeah, we've designed it to be 40 feet, but I don't know that it'd go that high, but we wanted to do some rock-like entry feature there and put a sign on it. It didn't, when I submitted for it, it doesn't have any, there's nowhere to submit except for through the sign ordinance, to do a rock feature with an entry logo. And so it was denied because it's not part of the PCD or not allowable.
And just for additional comment, I actually at another meeting saw what you were proposing and the person that made them, and I absolutely loved them.
No, I appreciate that. You can't tell his work that's not real. I mean, he
Right.
does a pretty fantastic job. So, and he's local to the community. So,
Thank you, Troy.
okay, thank you.
Okay. You've heard from staff, you've heard from the applicant. Council, further deliberation or a motion?
So I think Troy has great intentions. I just want to make sure he'll be selling some of these parcels, right? On the roof mounted, is it just to cover, maybe I should have asked you, sorry, Troy. Is it just to cover the HVAC units, or is it just all together because it's down in a hole? Like,
Well, it's both, right? I mean, it's you got a lot of businesses that if we're not allowed to break the plane of the roof and it has to be mounted onto the side of the building, drive past the back of the promenade. As you're getting on the freeway right there, you don't see any of the signage because it doesn't stand out.
I
right?
get the concept. I think what I'm struggling with is it's just can have roof mounted, and there's no oversight on how that happens. I guess you have the DRCs, but
You got the DRC and staff and you
Yeah,
know,
we
it's
got
still gonna
staff
have
still
to be
oversight.
designed and approved. If you wanted to do it as a conditional use, that's you know, you're still gonna have, anything over 5,000 square feet is gonna have a conditional use permit attached to it. You know, I'm sure signage could be part of that.
Yeah, I don't want to attach it to conditional use. I don't think it's necessary. Like I said, I just keep thinking about that crazy pizza place or something, but maybe I shouldn't for how much these places will cost to construct anyways. It's going to be well done, I'm sure. Just in general with the newer commercial.
Well, just to tag onto that, I mean, if Troy, whoever comes in and they're just trying to use signs to cover up mechanical stuff, and it's just a box like you can go down to Yesco and get, you know, I'm going to sit there and go, well, no, that's not what this was for, you know, and so I probably wouldn't pass off if that's all they're trying to do is just cover up mechanical equipment with some box you can buy at Yesco that has a plastic, you know, insert on it that says whatever the company is. I mean, we want something that's a little bit, you know, has something to it, I think.
So your last agenda item, they requested a height variance for, you know, roof screening, right? That's okay, but as soon as you put a sign on it, it's not okay. Right, I mean, and so I'm just, you know, this is just adding some verbiage in the PCD that opens that door to allow it.
And I get that, but when you say it just adds, usually the roof stuff to me is you're trying to hide it and not bring attention to it. But on verbiage, you're bringing attention to it. So it's just another way of looking at it. And now I'm sitting here thinking of towns in Japan that have advertisement like up and down it, right? Like, should there be some verbiage in here that's like can have their sign and their name, but we're not like advertising all these different things on it. And I just saying it just seems kind of out there. It just seems kind of way too loose. But
I think that was probably the point.
I'm sure it was, you know. And
I mean,
it leaves
because
flexibility,
there's always going to be, you know, again, there's going to be an approval process, right? But you're not going to design something unless the door is open to be able to design it. So I think that was the thought process. I mean, if in the PCD they went and spent all the time and effort and money designing a bunch of signage that even Sitla didn't stick to when they built the 50-foot sign that's out there now that they're now tearing down to move, right? So over time, signage is going to change. We don't know what businesses are coming in. I just wanted to open the door that if a business comes in, wants to have some signage that breaks that plane or is mounted on the roof, you know, aesthetically pleasing, and so has to go through an approval process. So.
No, I get what you're trying to do. I just haven't.
And I understand where you're coming from too, right?
Right. So I don't have any examples. I just having a hard time visualizing for me.
Okay.
I get you're trying to screen it, but I can't even think of one that's a good one that I've seen. I don't think we have any in town, do we? Or do we? That
Obviously we don't. I mean, most of the stuff that's in town is on the side of buildings, or if they want to stick something up, they just, like Best Buy has that big section that's popped up, but all the rest of those businesses don't, you know, are held down below. And if you want me to bring in examples, I'd be happy to.
What if you included city council review on it? Would that make you feel more comfortable with it?
No, because I think that's a lot of burdensome on they have the DRC and the city staff. Maybe I'm just it's just,
You can't
visualize it. And so I'm just having a hard time understanding it. It's just me, but it's not like, I don't know, what's the rest of council? You're okay with it? Or am I just overthinking it and haven't seen it? So I'm just cautious on it.
I mean, I would like to see pictures and what you're envisioning.
Well, I'd be happy to bring some of that in. I did bring a bunch of examples in, sat down with Drew, and, you know, this meeting felt like it probably wasn't appropriate to try and bring stuff in. I mean, you know, we're not designing for a specific business at this point, right? It's just, hey, here's some examples of what's been done in other places, and I'm happy to do that.
And that's the issue, getting back to that point, if you're bringing stuff, but that client in that building is totally different than that. You're going to say, well, that's not what everyone was supposed to look like this one you showed me. And I know you understand that, but that's sometimes we get locked in and say, well, that's way different than what you showed me because, the company A versus company B are going to be different. They, marketing, everything is big time out there and they want to be different than somebody else. And that's their whole ploy is they don't want to all look the same.
So what is the review process, Drew, for each? And if somebody wants to build a building and they want to put a sign on the roof, what is the review process?
We have a process right now called zoning review. And that's probably what I would use. Troy's used it before anyway, and most businesses have. Or their sign company will bring and say, hey, we want the city to approve, does this meet your zoning? It's a zoning verification for signage. I'd probably use that same process. I'd have them come in, show us what the sign's going to be, where it's located, the colors. They have to show all that, where the electricity's coming from, all those things. We kind of review that. We look at the square footage and everything on it. So we'd probably use that same thing. Sitla's probably just you'll turn it into Aaron or to Greg, and they'll probably take it in and sit down with Kyle, and Aaron and Greg will sit there and review it and think they're going to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down or right and say, well, we want to see this or this or this. And they'll give it back to Troy. Same with us. We'll say, the square footage is probably a little too much. You need to take at least 10% off or whatever it may be, because we're still going to try to hold them to whatever our standard. I don't want to just give them free reign to put in a sign it's 10 times bigger than anybody else is allowed in square footage. We'll have to look at, everything in perspective to the size of the building, where it's going. It's going to be not just you look at it and go, yeah, that looks good, and you're on your way. We'll definitely chew it up, vet it out, and I'm guaranteed that Sitla will too. And then we'll come back with our red lines to them and come to an agreed thing between the two, and then they can either build it or bring in a different design.
What if the height, that just made me think about the height, that would be included in the building height, right? Because what if they meet the building height requirement, but then they want to put a
they
10-foot sign
probably
on
have to
top?
come in and ask for a height waiver, probably, I would think, because I don't want to give them freedom to then put anything up above and,
What
to
is your
that.
height
So
waiver? Is it 55?
Everything up there is 55 foot.
Yeah, so they'd have to, if you say you put a 5-foot sign, you'd have to be under that 55 is what I would assume, because that's the height waiver of the building and it's.
Or if it went over, like was that last
Yeah.
application, it'd be a height
then
variance.
you would see them.
Yeah.
And so that might, in fact, that might be a little bit of comfort for you, because I can promise you that most of the time you're going to try to max out the building heights. And so most time, if they want to put in a sign, they're going to ask for a waiver on that, and you're going to see what that sign is.
Well,
in
and-
some cases, right? I mean, that's
And
what I'm
again, anything over 5,000 square feet has to come through CUP or at least come back before planning commission, so.
So I'm comfortable with it. I think there's going to be plenty of review process, however that, whatever route that takes. And then I really think it's important for people driving down the freeway to know exactly what's there and to be able to see it and be interested in it. So, I'm thinking if the signs are down low, I mean, Troy, you're probably 30, 40 feet below the
easily
freeway. So that's a way for the signage to stand out and let people know, what's there and what's for sale and what businesses are operating there. And I think that's important.
I think you can make it look really nice. I guess the big question that I'm having is whether, you visualize in those big cities, the Coca-Cola signs that are up on the freestanding big metal beams, or if they're enclosed in a box and placed up on top that kind of looks more of an enclosed. But I do think it could be done nice, and I do, we definitely don't want people driving past that exit onto Neighbors to spend their money. So, we want to create every opportunity we can to.
So can you pull up on, you Google Earth or something, or actually just do a Google search for Immigration Canyon? Immigration Canyon has the, oh my heck, I lost the name of the grocer. Harmon's, Immigration Canyon Harmon's. I think it's EMM. Immigration.
With an E?
Uh-huh.
Be careful what comes up on that Google search, Drew.
What's that? Holy cow, Steve, you're making me look bad now. Is that how you spell it?
Yeah. Immigration, yeah, Immigration Canyon, Harmons.
Now I'm frustrated because you guys are all watching. And what is it again?
It's a Harmons.
Let's see what.
So click on that photo right there. This was done up in Salt Lake, right? And it's a Harmons up in the middle of the area. That, according to code right now, or according to the ordinance, I couldn't do something like that, right? That to me adds interest. I think it's kind of a cool way to do signage on that building.
It's retro.
You know, I look at, as I drive around and look at things, I just look at, okay, what's going to allow some uniqueness, some, you know, some interest, I don't like the normal just channel signage that a lot of places do. So if there's things like that we can do, that's cool to me.
What's that one in Gilbert or
Tempe Marketplace.
Tempe Market? Let's see if we can
Yep.
pull that up too.
Pull Tempe Marketplace up. So click on images up there at the top.
Where am I?
Right up,
Right
up,
here?
right there. Yeah, click on images. So they've got, and it's hard to tell, but you can see where that one right there. If you'll click on that one, you can see they have this kind of a ribbon sign. That's one of their entries that leads in. That's actually right along the freeway at Tempe Marketplace down in the Phoenix area, right? So that's a way for some of those businesses that couldn't be seen otherwise to be seen from the freeway down in Phoenix.
And this
That's-
live I've been here is an awesome looking development. It really is. They've
That's
done
a great
job.
development. Yeah, but that's how they handled their their interstate frontage to be able to get some signage for the businesses that were not readily seen or, you know, tucked around the back.
Further questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Belliston. Council, further discussion or motion?
I think that made Councilman Coast like it even less. I don't know that. We're just giving you some examples, but
Didn't screen one unit. Those two examples.
no, I just say, but yeah, but it's not just for the units. I just think even if they don't have any, I think there's some things that can just help something pop and just say, hey, I'm here, you know, to that passerby. So
I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance for zone change request C-22-23, amending the Sienna Hills PCD parcels 10A-F.
Have a motion by Councilmember Casperson.
Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Have a second by Councilmember Ivy. This is an ordinance, so we'll go roll call vote. Ivy?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. We're excited to see some buildings come up out of the ground and to have to see some signs there. It's gonna be a great addition to the city. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, preliminary plat. This is consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Crimson Court located at approximately 990 East George Washington Boulevard. And where this will be our first meeting where we don't conduct a public hearing on a preliminary plat, but knowing this council, I'm confident you all took the time to review the Plan Commission meeting where the public hearing was held. I'll invite City Planner Eldon Gibb to come forward and speak to item 6A.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This particular subdivision is proposing 8 lots on an area covering 3.6 acres. The zoning designation at this location was recently rezoned to the R110 zoning. The surrounding zoning is RA1 with bonus density to the north, single-family residential, 15,000 square foot minimum to the east, and the single-family residential 8,000 square foot to the south and planned unit development to the west. The proposed subdivision conforms to approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request and recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Crimson Court subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions. Condition 13 was added by the Planning Commission and has since been addressed by the applicant by adding a note onto, I believe it's page number 3. And I'll quickly read condition 13, which states the grade on the east side of the development shall address the drainage in this area. And again, there's a note on page 3, page 4.
Okay.
What are we addressing, Eldon?
So there was some concern that the development to the east and this proposed development would pool in that area. And the applicant is also concerned and acknowledged that and going to work through with staff, Public Works specifically, and getting that out.
Eldon, I'm still not seeing that note, and I appreciated the discussion in the council meeting, and I actually appreciated also the applicant's response, but I'm not as familiar with these as maybe some are, and I'd like to see where the note is.
So I'll read that so it's on the record as well. It states the note on, let me confirm which page it's
At the
on.
very bottom of the grading notes.
Page.
It's on your TV, so if you find the one that has these.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that. Is that just the one that says all building pads shall be elevated above the adjacent grade?
See where my arrow's flashing? That's the one it's talking about right
Oh,
on
that
the-
specific note.
Yes. Yeah, not the general notes. It's on the.
Okay.
Retaining wall drainage to be designed to safely receive tributary flows and safely convey them to a public right-of-way. And with this project still being preliminary, the project to the east still being preliminary, they'll work together and take care of that.
So Eldon, they are, and I was at the Planning Commission meeting for this, they are planning on a retaining wall of some sort and drainage at development. I know some of my concerns on these is when you have a great big elevation change like that, sometimes they just do like a 2-to-1 slope or something and then walk away and let the different home builders deal with it. And I never really liked that approach to it. So they're gonna do something at development to address that. And
Correct, yeah. The one to the east will be a two wall tiered retaining wall.
Okay.
Did you have more in your report,
No, that's it. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
council?
So regardless if the other property to the east goes in, this is still good. Like they've addressed it, so regardless of what the other property does, this property will be good, covered with drainage.
Correct, yeah. If one moves before the other, we'll address that project to accommodate the water flow.
Just out of curiosity, I think that's a great question. How is that addressed if the timings, I mean, typically I would see the parcels of the east maybe be retaining the water because they're on the higher ground, but how does that work if Crimson Court moves first?
Well, ideally, we'd like to see both kind of evolve at the same time and then build a retaining wall and then we backfill to it. If one does get held up, we would sit down and look at the existing land and figure it out.
Okay.
Are both property owners responsible to pay for this mutually beneficial drainage?
Well, this proposal, they'll take care of their drainage in this subdivision and vice versa for the one to the east.
That's between property owners.
So Eldon, maybe I'll keep you on standby. Are you the applicant or the applicant's representative? If you'd come forward and just introduce yourself and maybe answer some of the questions that the council members have had and tell us anything else you want us to know.
Yeah, I'm Jared Matson with Alpha Engineering, representing the applicant. It is kind of a tricky one where we're kind of simultaneous with this other subdivision and we want to work with them, but how do we plan to do that if they don't end up going forward or vice versa? And my approach that I would think would be the best, since we don't know, would to have two alternatives. We've already reached out to Pope Engineering. We've gotten their grading plan and we'll put together a retaining wall that benefits both and we can set up a cost share. But I'm thinking we'll have an alternative that should they not develop, we'll have a different wall design that works just on our property, stays on our property, and receives flows on the
Tiered.
existing conditions. It would, yeah, I think we're, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be tiered. If they don't go in, yeah.
What's the elevation difference between your easterly border and, you know, the cul-de-sac?
It's about 12 feet.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, that requires tiering. I think you can only go 8 feet.
Not in our city.
So if potentially, if you guys go forward with development and the guy to the east doesn't do anything, we'll still have retaining walls there and.
Right, yeah, if they go in, it's gonna be flatter, nicer retaining wall. If they don't, it's probably gonna be a little wavier with the, because it's kind of, you can see the contours dip in and out.
Thank you. And you have great taste in glasses, by the way, my friend.
Matching.
Looking
It's
good,
my
looking
wife.
good.
Council, further abuse for either the applicant or the staff member? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for discussion or a motion on Crimson Court.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Crimson Court located at 990 East George Washington Boulevard.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates.
Second.
Second by Councilman Martinson. This is a preliminary plat, so it's single vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Congratulations. Move on to item 6B. This is a consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Crimson Trails located at approximately 545 East, 4200 South. As City Planner Eldon Gibb will present on this item.
Thank you, Council, Mayor. The particular subdivision is proposing 112 townhome pad sites on an area covering 15.33 acres. On August 10th, 2022, the zoning designation at this location was rezoned to PUD. During the zone change approval, City Council added conditions 13 and 14, which have been added to the conditions of this preliminary plat. The surrounding zoning is planned unit development to the north and south, single-family residential 8,000 square foot minimum to the west, and agricultural 20-acre minimum to the east. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on October 5th, 2022, and recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Crimson Trails subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions. And I'll quickly read conditions 13 and 14, which state the park will be completed and approved prior to recording of the final plat. And condition 14, the detention basin will be lined with landscape rock in the bottom. And also I do want to point out the phase lines. In the zone change, there was some discussion of the completion of the roadways. Phase 1, it doesn't encompass the build out of those major roads to finish that out.
So can you be a little more clear on that, and maybe can you flow the cursor on there, Drew, of what that phase is?
He doesn't know how to use the ink setting.
So phase 1 includes
There's the, okay, I see it now.
the build out of 545 East and also Hayfield Drive.
I think that's the most thing I was looking at, was just to make sure that Hayfield is complete. I mean, that's kind of the primary access to to the high school and middle school off Washington Fields Road right now, so.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have at this time.
Is there going to be a gap on Hayfield? Or is it completed to the front, to the property? I can't remember. It's hard to see on this.
Like a landscape strip?
It's right now it's built halfway, but the first part was built full width to a point. I just can't tell if there's going to be some little gap or something in between. I'm assuming no, but we can ask the applicant. He's shaking his head no, but we'll ask him to come up and.
That's a large phase one. Yeah, that's good. Further questions for staff? I'll invite the applicant to come forward.
Ryan Thomas with DSG Engineering. You're correct. Hayfield will be built all the way out. There's going to be 50, so there's 112 lots total. 56 in the first phase, 56 in the second phase. The first phase looks bigger because it's going to have the rec area and also the detention area in it, and also Hayfield Road, and then the West Road. Is that 545?
So Ryan, just a question: are we not concerned about the Crimson Trails Drive? Like, it seems like we got a lot of dead ends here in this first phase.
Yeah, so we'll be putting temporary turnarounds.
You will put those in. Okay.
Yeah, we'll show those on the construction plans.
Well, I would rather see on Crimson Trail and what's this other? Sorry, and the 4235. Just road base that out so people can drive through.
Oh, just to connect
Instead
that
of a
little
turnaround,
L
just
shape.
connect that little L shape,
Okay.
at least in road base, because I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to have your utilities go that way anyways.
Yeah,
To get those services. I just think that connectivity would be helpful. That was my concern, is that little L right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see. I mean, like you said, we're going to be putting the utilities in to drain some of that stuff anyway, so it wouldn't be that much of a waste. We'll have all the subsurface utilities in anyway.
And then there is a condition about the park. It has to be in at final plat. Did you
Correct, at
see
the
that?
first final plat, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure you're aware. It's
Yeah.
kind of a new thing we're doing, so.
Any further questions for Mr. Thomas? Thank you.
Thanks.
Council, I'd be happy to entertain a motion unless there's further discussion on this item.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve the preliminary plat for Crimson Trails located at 545 East, 4200 South.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates,
I'll second that.
second by Councilman Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now that's approved unanimously. It's going to be a great project. Okay, let's move on to item 6C. This is consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Hoodoo Hollow located at approximately Lost Spring Drive and Riggs Loop Drive. Applicants D.R. Horton, Eldon Gibb, our city planner, will present on this item again.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Kind of a last minute change. Speaking with the applicant, I'd like to ask to table this item along with 6D. I'm happy to read the report at this time if you'd like, or.
I don't think it's necessary. Per the applicant's request, well, let's dial in a date. Did they have to the next council meeting?
Correct, November 9th.
November 9th, great. So per the applicant's request, I'll call for a motion to table item 6C to our November 9th meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates.
Do they need to be motioned separately or together?
I was just going to do them separate since they're separate items.
Second.
A second by Councilmember Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
6C is tabled until November 9th. I'll call for motion to table item 6D, which is consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Coral Hollow located at approximately Lost Creek Drive and Coral Hollow Drive to the November 9th council meeting.
So moved.
A motion by Councilman Ivy,
Second.
second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6D is tabled till our November 9th meeting.
If I may, Mayor, just to kind of give you a heads up, we're tentatively planning to moving the workforce housing into Hoodoo Hollow, which was kind of the delay, just working through that. So that'll be coming back as well.
Great. Do we need to send that back to planning with that change? Just a question.
No, yeah, if the subdivision itself hasn't changed.
The changes are conditions and offers to satisfy their workforce housing obligation under the PCD.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with lot lines and things.
Can I ask for a request from staff that you put in their PCD map, but you didn't identify which parcels we're talking about? So next time, just highlight them for us so that I think I knew where it was, but it was a little confusing. So
Yeah, I was going to get into that in my report. Identify pods 15, 18. We can specify that.
just so that when we're reviewing our packet, we know. Okay, thanks.
You know, I had a chance to drive out there this morning. As maybe some of you have driven out recently, and sure is there's a lot going on. I guess is an understatement. Okay, we'll move on to item 7. We have some ordinances to review. We'll do roll call votes on these. Item 7A is a consideration to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Power Underground Construction Standards. Our Power Director, Rick Hansen, will present on this item, and he presented at our last workshop session, so we had a pretty thorough review of a lot of exciting underground electrical.
I'm sure you've all read all 74 pages and looked through all 30-some drawings. So you're right. We had a good session a couple weeks ago. So really, the only change from what you had before is what we talked about on the fees. We just referenced on page 6, current city policies and ordinances. Other than that, I did bring Mike tonight. If we need reinforcements, he was instrumental in putting these together. But really, I don't have anything further to present unless you need something or have some questions.
Does anyone have any easy questions for Rick or hard questions for Mike?
I have a gratitude to both of you for putting this together. I think it looks good. I've been through it. I think you did a good job, so I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
The Power Board was very appreciative of it, and they unanimously recommended it to us to move forward, and they're the experts. And
Are there any Power Board members in the audience that ought to be recognized for their involvement? I'm seeing one shake his head no, but we all know otherwise.
let's just
Thank you, Dick.
let's recognize that Lori was there too. So
She's everywhere he is, which is a good thing.
No, but seriously, Council, are there questions for our Power Director? If not, I'd be happy to have a motion to approve this item with gratitude as our Power Board liaison as expressed.
I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Power Underground Construction Standards.
I have a motion by Councilmember Casperson.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Second by Councilmember Henderson. Roll call vote. Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Item 7B, consideration to approve an ordinance vacating Lot 2 of the Mahas subdivision. City Planner Eldon Gibb, you're not off the hook just yet.
No problem. It's good to be on the hook, I guess. Thank you, Mayor and Council. On May 25th, 2022, City Council approved the preliminary plat for the Dennett East Industrial Phase 2 subdivision. The final plat for this subdivision has been submitted. Currently, this land is platted as Lot 2 of the Maha subdivision. The Dennett East Industrial Phase 2 subdivision will be replacing Lot 2 of the Maha subdivision. And this request is to vacate Lot 2 of the Maha subdivision to make way for that incoming Dennett East Phase 2. Staff recommends that council approve this, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions for our city planner? I'll be happy to entertain a motion.
This is really just straightforward. I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance vacating Lot 2 of the Mahaz subdivision.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivy,
Second.
second by Councilman Coates. Roll call, Henderson,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Casperson,
Aye.
Ivy,
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. 7C, consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-22-24 from RA1 to R115, located at approximately Washington Dam Road and Wyatt Lane. Community Development Director Drew Ellerman will present on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, there's my report. Sorry, too many papers everywhere. Applicants requesting approval of the zone change of approximately 4.82 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning of residential agricultural 1 acre minimum, or the RA1 zoning designation, to the proposed single-family residential 15,000 square foot R115 zoning designation. The request for the R115 is to have the purpose to develop this acreage into future subdivision. This particular location was recently approved for a general plan land use designation to the very low density residential. Before that, it was in the estate. The very low density residential allows for the R115 zoning district and higher. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is RA1 to the north and west, with RA5 to the east and PUD to the south. Staff has no concerns with the proposed zone change as outlined. The applicant is in harmony with the surrounding land uses and the general plan. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their October 19th meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-22-24 for the zone change request from RA1 to the proposed R115, and that's on to you, the City Council, and based on the findings in your report. Be glad to answer any questions you have. Again, recently you just amended this in the general plan for this purpose to get this zone change, so.
Questions for Drew?
My only concern is just the width of this parcel. I don't know how they're going to develop it and make it, but.
Well, they're going to probably have to work with the property to the east to help, and that's what I've told them. It'll make it better for both of them in the long run that they join together.
And I know we have to start somewhere. I'm just super concerned. It's only 175 feet wide and we have to fit a road and whatever else in. And I don't want these weird, funky cul-de-sacs on these weird.
I agree.
So I mean, I'm fine with changing the zone. I'm just saying, I just am curious how they'll lay it out. But
We had one like this before, didn't we?
Yeah, and we had some issues, but they had a little more land than 175 feet wide.
Right.
And then they ended up joining with, it's the one with the Dennett's and the other people that they got wise and joined them together, and it helped make that subdivision much better.
But we saw a subdivision to the east that they could tie to. This one, I don't see anything to the east or west. So I'm just to say it out there. I hope the applicant's hearing that they'll have to figure out how they're doing it, and hope that I'm concerned. I'm okay with the zoning, but I'm concerned about the layout.
Yeah, when I started here 16 years ago and I was going through the map and saw this, who did that and why? It just was unique lots, and I just thought, man, those are going to be problematic if anybody wants to do anything different than own the whole thing. And so we'll see. They're going to have to be creative, and they're going to have to, I think, work together with 2, if not 3 property owners to pull things off. So, sorry, I didn't hear your.
Can you pull up so we can see it, how it looks, a map of it?
You mean the aerial?
I'll get to the aerial here. So.
While he's pulling that up, is the applicant or applicant's representative here? Great, you're on deck, so as soon as you want to start making your way.
It's this piece and the one right below it highlighted in the blue. So you can see all the properties, you have a lot of them out there that have this long, narrow, very deep, 1,300 feet in the cases, but usually 150 to 200 feet wide. And so you can see that where they might need, again, if they go with the properties to the east, they can create and really make something worthwhile out there, I think, on that. So but we'll see what happens. It doesn't mean they have to, but it sure helps. Does that help you, counsel?
Applicant, if you'll just speak to the questions, concerns you've heard.
You bet. My name is Rick Meyer with Bush and Gudgel. I appreciate your concerns and reviewing this application. To be completely frank and honest, since the owner's not here and this is not a public meeting, just kidding. It is a pig, just looking at it, it's like really long and super narrow.
Have you got the lipstick, Larry?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we are trying to be as, imaginative as possible, I guess, right? But we are working with the neighbors to provide access through their property and everything. And obviously, you can't have a 1,300-foot long cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be asking us for a variance on that, because I'm just telling you now, I'm not trying to go down that road because we're talking zoning. I just am concerned with this property, and
Fire trucks would like that either.
Yeah, we're very aware of those restrictions, and we're working with the neighbor on that. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Does that help? Does it help that we're just at the zoning stage and not the plating stage?
It helps that he understands the risks.
Okay.
And as long as the owner understands the risks.
Say I didn't know.
So.
Okay.
Or at least his applicant. The owner's not here. So.
Any other council discussion on this item? Oh, let's have a motion then.
I'll make a motion. We approve the ordinance of zone change Z-22-24 from RA1 to R115.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates.
Second.
Second by Councilman Martinson. We'll go roll call. Henderson.
Aye.
Martinson. Aye. Casperson.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
I think I started twice with you, didn't I? Yeah, I was on the next one. All right.
Just unfair.
7D. This is consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-22-25 from RA2 and I1 to R18 and RA1/2, located at approximately 200 West and 840 South. Community Development Director Drew Ellerman will tell us more about this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, applicants request an approval to change approximately 17.33 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning. It's split, and that's the different colors. The bottom color is currently I1 or light industrial. The other color on the top, more yellow, is currently RA2, residential agricultural 2 acre. The proposal is to go to single family residential 8,000 square foot or R18, and that's everything on the left side of this north-south line. So all the things with the hash marks going this way,
On
you
the
want
west?
to turn, on the west would be R18, and then everything on the other side with the hash marks going this direction on the east side, they want to turn to the residential agricultural half acre minimum. The R18 and RA1/2 requests is for the purpose to develop the acreage into future subdivision. This particular location also was recently approved for a new general plan use designation of medium density residential to go along with the remainder of the estate residential, which allows for the RA1/2 on that east side. And then the medium allows for the R18 on the west side of that north-south line. So there's your two zones going from two into two different zones, just different perspective, north-south to the east to west on that. So staff has no concerns with this proposed zone change as outlined, especially due that they just recently approved a general plan amendment, and we discussed that in those public hearings. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their October 19th, 2022 meeting, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of 22-25 for the zone change request from the residential agricultural 2-acre and light industrial to the proposed R18 and RA half zoning designations, and that's on to you, the city council, based on the findings below in the report. Glad to answer any questions council has on this
Council?
proposal.
Is the applicant's representative here? I'd also love to hear from the applicant if he's up for it. It's always good to talk to you, Jerry. But you don't have to, but if you want to, okay?
I was going to say that I can't badmouth this one. No, but this one does take a lot less imagination. It's a beautiful canvas, nice property, and just here to answer any questions if you have any.
I love the way that it would connect an area that's ready, that 840 South area, and I like the way also that you've phased that, right? I mean, you had some interesting surrounding zonings and residential uses and industrial uses. I think this zoning will makes a lot of sense for the plat that you'll bring forward. That's not a question. That's just a.
Thank you.
You're supposed to make the case to them, not me. I'll stop making your case.
I like how you like it, but yeah, we thought it would be, it was a good transition from I can't remember what it is over in St. George, but it seems like it's a higher density over on the west side, and so we bring in the R18s, and then the between those neighbors in the cul-de-sac there, they have some really large lots, and just have the half acre in between. They really appreciated having those half acre lots depicted there, and so that's
Yeah,
just
there's a lot.
what
That's
we're
ag
proposing.
property, right? It's down there by the posse, and
Yeah. So, thank you.
Council, I'm guessing we're ready for a motion or more discussion. I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-22-25 from RA2 to RA2 and industrial 1 to R-1-8 and RA half, located approximately 200 west and 840 south.
I have a motion by Councilmember Casperson,
I'll second that.
second by Councilmember Martinson. There's a roll call vote. Martinson,
Aye.
Casperson,
Aye.
Ivy,
Aye.
Coates,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Jerry. Thumbs up. Congratulations. All right. We'll move on to item number 8. This is an agreement and just kind of an update for the council in response to a lot of puzzle pieces down here that, we've seen this area a lot, and it just really plays to the value of our city manager, who was able to just, work with multiple interested parties and let him explain, the solution on Weatherby Way and the completion, of that road over to Washington Fields Road.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if they like it before we talk about my value. Let's see how good it is. I'm not sure there's a road we've talked about any more than Weatherby Way for it not being Washington Fields Road. But if everybody remembers, we've had a lot of heartburn on Weatherby Way because we approved this this subdivision, and then it's been broken up into phases and sold. And as those phases have come in, some of Weatherby Way is in each phase, and then some of it isn't in this project, and then it goes clear out to Washington Fields Road. So it's been concerning to the city how we're going to get Weatherby Way built and when, and we've had a lot of people pointing different fingers to other people to build it. So we did meet with some of the owners of the different developments and then with the applicant of the subdivision, and we came up with an agreement that we think works pretty well. The big problem with Weatherby Way is there's an NRCS line that has to be moved, and that is now out to bid, so it should be moving fairly soon. But they want to be able to start construction on homes, and the council put the condition on that they could not start constructing homes until Weatherby Way was finished. So what we'd like to do is propose, and I don't have the agreement tonight, so I'm just going to give you the outline. and get any comments that you have, and we can incorporate them. But the agreement that would be signed, and Thad has been working with their attorney, they would put a 110% cash bond for the cost of Weatherby Way and all additional improvements in the road. They already have a deeded roadway plat, so they would deed that to the city so that we would own the deeded roadway all the way out to Washington Fields Road. And the agreement would give them 12 months to construct Weatherby Way, or the city would take the cash bond and finish the construction. And then we have some provision to release the bond in phases as the road is constructed, so they can use that money to build the road. So I think it's a good solution. It took a little negotiating, and our city attorney is still working on final details, but I just wanted to get your feedback and make sure we're heading on the right direction here.
Did you want to touch on, Jeremy, just construction access to during that 12-month period?
So yeah, the detail on the dedication is we would require that the road be dedicated on the front end, in the beginning, at the outset, and it could be used. That would then be a public right of way that could be used during the construction phase.
And they've agreed to use it for all, heavy equipment and the real messy part. A lot of these roads have already been constructed within the subdivisions themselves. So much of the heavy road equipment has already happened, but if they're bringing large deliveries and different things, they would do it through Weatherby Way.
So is the extra 10% just a contingency?
Yes. Yep. It's pretty standard.
But let me ask you, said phases. My understanding is we're only releasing it in phases based on if they're done with the sewer, we can release some of the sewer money. If they're done with the water, they can get some of the water, but we're not doing it in segments of the road. The whole road has to be completed within the 12 months.
Correct. The whole road.
So those segments haven't been specifically broke out yet, but the concept is it'll be done within the 12-month period.
I just wanted to be clear that it's not phase of segments of road. It's phases of segments of constructing the entire road.
So the concept is, I don't even know numbers, but say it was $5 million. We don't want them to have to bond $5 million and then also go build the road for $5 million and then get their $5 million back. And so as they actually construct, then we can release that much of it. But after 12 months, we go in and construct.
Do you see what I'm saying though?
I do. I understand what you're saying.
Right, as long as you understand it and you're dealing with it, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're not building
even more important than
500
that,
feet of
Thad
it.
understands it, so it's really good.
So my other question is, did you find out who's in charge of the NRCS bid?
I haven't yet, but that's part of it.
Okay,
If the NRCS is part of it, that'll be part of the cash bond.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if it's part of the responsibility of the road is on the developer, that moving of the NRCS, that moving of the NRCS line is part of the bond. Now, if it's the NRCS or some other agency that's dealing with it, and the money's already allocated, I'm not concerned about it.
Yep. So the intention then would be to bring this back next week, along with the roadway plat dedication. And then they'd like to bring or not next week, in 2 weeks. That what you're giving me the 2 for? In 2 weeks. And then they would like to have their final plats for some of these phases on as well. So we would do this agreement first, get the roadway dedicated, and then you can do plats. You could do the plats contingent upon completion of the cash bond and the agreement. So that's the plan anyway. A lot of people who'd like to get started on the homes in there, and I know it's been a good thing that the city has held back, and otherwise, there's always the possibility that something happens and we don't get the roadway finished, but they've been good to work with to help come to a solution. So.
Okay. Any further counsel for Jeremy? Thank you. Item 9 is a report of officers from assigned committee. Councilman Martinson, kick us off.
I don't have anything. Well, I guess I do. Youth Council has their Halloween activities going on at the Covington Mansion, so it's all decorated for Halloween. So they're doing
Looks really good.
They did a really good job, a fabulous job. There was a lot of swag involved, according to Carmen. So they did a great job. The kids will be dressed up as zombies on Halloween night for the trick or treating. So if you have kids or grandkids, stop by.
You know, I was up at the trunk or treat on Monday. Oh my goodness, the number of kids and companies handing out candy was impressive. Thank you, Councilman Henderson.
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Councilman Coates.
I'm just gonna have to pull my weight tonight. No one's got anything. No, I wanted to ask the council. So we met on the solid waste board on 2 Mondays ago. We talked about the rate increases, and we kind of just talked about the rate increases based on the new CIB paying back the loan, and kind of some other items that are in the agenda. And I just kind of want to get the temperature of the council. It's a few cents per residential household. They're going to raise the MSW. It's fairly minor in my mind. I know we've had a lot of rate increases across the board, but it helps pay back our CIB loan to get the new scale houses and stuff. So if you have a concern, you can reach out to me and we can discuss it, or it's just one of those things I think we need. I don't know where the board's going to land. We have a bunch of different options, but it's not a large increase for the residential home. There's more of an increase for the commercial side, but we did do a 60% increase it's just because there's more residentials. Like an example, 60% of the residents ends up being like 31 cents at 60% of what we need. It's about $430,000 a year to pay back the loan debt. And then the commercial side, it's just based on how much tonnage you have. So it's just lower. But we split it because it's equal share between the residents and commercial, and residential is more of a guaranteed revenue source versus a commercial that can go up and down based on the economy. So,
and remind us, kind of how that went. You applied and you got.
Oh, so I thought I reported that last time. We got $9 million.
I was just really happy about that.
Okay.
It was so needed.
So we got the $9 million for the first 2 phases. So there'll be a new scale house building and then a new administration building. There won't be a public convenience center. That's phase 3, but we still have the existing public convenience center, and we'll try to figure something out in the time being. One thing is interesting is that our staff should see some plans from them because it does touch our road. So it's a Washington City road on some of their accesses.
The county property.
So it's kind of weird, but just I've been trying to help them in the right direction of how to make their access management work, but we'll let our staff follow through. So with their group.
So are you the board member, councilman, that is responsible for the nice new ground cover and improvements on the stack?
I would have to put that to, it is nice looking, right?
It's really good, yeah.
So we had a new cell development and we had a lot of rock. I don't know if you guys know, but there's a little bit of rock over there. And so they put it in a crusher and then put the face of the slope on it. So they're trying to clean up the landfill. They're trying to do some things the new cell's looking pretty nice.
There's the two-tone feel to it. I thought they did a good job. That was just the local stuff that they ground out.
That was just the loan that they put it in the crusher and brought it, and it was a good place to put it, and it looks really nice actually. But we're trying to clean it up and not make it look such like a landfill, more of a little nicer landfill. But
so you're trying to make the landfill not look like a landfill?
But look like the landfill. Nice. We want you to know it's a landfill, but
have you considered above parapet signage?
I was thinking about it, and I think they're going to come in with a roof signage.
We'll let Drew sign up.
But that's in the county, so whatever, right?
Councilman Ivy.
How do I follow that? Okay, legislative policy. It's starting to come into focus some of the legislation we have to look forward to next year. I did reach out and found out that there's some key issues that I would have liked to have seen some legislation on that is not coming forward this year. But that picture's coming into focus. We should have a really good picture here in the middle of November in our next one. And then just a quick update on the water working group. Something that's interesting, just as a kind of a, it doesn't really hold a lot of water, but it's just something of reference. So in the recent reductions in allocations of the Colorado River, every lower basin state and Old Mexico all agreed to taking less water out, except one big state on our west border, or on our west coast. So California was the only one that would not reduce their allocation. So
Wasn't it a 25%?
Yeah.
They were supposed to take?
they were supposed to, but they refused. And so now, I mean, there was some other conversation about what that's going to look like going forward. But I had a really good meeting with my friend that works for the Department of the Interior, that actually works at both Glen Canyon and Hoover Dam. And he's such a great resource, one of our great city residents here. And he's just a great resource to be able to get good, accurate information that I'll try to bring back for your consideration. And Mayor, I just want to mention one more thing that, from time to time, we have a lot of stuff come at us, and I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I'm just wondering, Mayor, if you and the council would consider a retreat to talk about some things that that maybe can be discussed better in a retreat, rather than we just don't seem to have a lot of time in council meeting to talk about things. So I want to just propose that. As far as topics to talk about, I think that we're all aware of a lot of the stuff that's going on, but it just seems like it would be nice to, it's been a long time since we've had that opportunity to just catch our breath and be able to talk about maybe some things and some planning issues and some just kind of share thoughts and some considerations. So just my thought.
Would there be food involved in this retreat?
The mayor's buying.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's a water cleanse.
If we did that, would it work better to maybe have a day rather than an overnight? Maybe someplace kind of. Okay. I like that idea. I've had that in the back of my mind too. I think that'd be good. There's a lot to catch up on, and too much to do, too little time to do it with.
Well, it just, we have a busy city, and we're all involved in our communities, and it just seems like sometimes it's good just be able to catch your breath and be able to have some conversations and talk a little bit about growth and planning and things like that, as well as some key issues that we just need to take some time on, I think, to talk about.
I'll get with the staff and have them try to dial in a date that we can all make work. I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Casperson. And I think the only thing I'd report on, I can't recall a busier 2 weeks as far as city goes than these past two, but I think the one that I just mentioned is there's been a committee that we've been meeting with Horrocks Engineering and UDOT and trying to dial in some aesthetics for the Interchange 11 off ramp and underpass from Main Street, and we've made some good progress with that committee, and appreciate everybody. You can see 3 or 4 of you here that have been in those meetings, and appreciate I think what we were able to accomplish there, maybe against some odds, was pretty good. So I guess that's probably the only update. And of course, if we ever get a chance to just catch up, I have a lot of things I can just spill. But in a public meeting, maybe that's all I'll spill right now.
I appreciate your work on that, Mayor. I know you shared a couple of pictures with me, and I really liked what you guys had accomplished. So thank you.
All right, next item, 10, City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of items today. I don't know how many people have been by to see the new Parks building coming out of the ground, but it looks really nice. They're starting on the footings and the lateral work. So we'll start designing the rooftop sign that can be seen from I-15 very soon. It'll be really nice. Sunrise Valley Park, they've now poured the pickleball courts, and a lot of the other cement work is going in. That one was slowed down a little bit while we designed the park to handle secondary water when it comes. So we want to make sure that we're trying to use that water resource carefully, but it did slow that park down a little bit. The Canal Trailhead that's near Shinabkai, the application's into the BLM, so we're waiting on approval to move forward on that. So I would mention that Barry and his group have, right now we counted 14 projects that are in some stage of planning or building or that type of thing. So we'd like to have Barry come and give an update fairly soon. I've spoke with the mayor about it. A lot of projects in the works and a lot of things happening. We want to get you updated on those. But those are some of the highlights. The other item I have is not such an exciting item. If you remember the really, really hot power or the really, really hot weather that we had in September, Went along with hot weather all through the west and really did a number on our power bill. So we had our highest power bill ever for the city of Washington in the September month. So, well, it was the highest ever, and it happened to be in September, which is not good both directions. So we're going to want to be discussing using some of our rate stabilization fund, which is the fund that we save in that power company for events like this. But it's definitely going to impact the cost of power for us and for our residents in the short term. But if we'll discuss that at our next meeting, using some of that fund to potentially help lessen that impact. And I just think it really points to the need for a carbon-free dispatchable resource. And we've been talking about this for a decade or more, but even California is talking about keeping their nuclear plants online and doing some other things. We can't keep going the way we're going, or we'll have this continue. So appreciate the council's support for the carbon-free, the small modular nuclear projects, but it's important, and it's important especially when it hits our residents. So be thinking about that, and if you have any questions, Rick can answer those for you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, I'll call for a motion to move to closed session to discuss purchase, exchange, or lease of property and pending or potential litigation.
So moved.
Motion by Coates, second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll take 5 minutes and meet in the conference room.
Yeah. It was.
Recording stopped.